Hey guys, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Happy Friday, guys. We have made it through a whole entire week back from the Christmas break holiday season. And baby, we made it, if you can believe it. It's Friday and we made it. Y'all, this is a really sad story. So I'm gonna give you a trigger warning. It's sad, it's awful. It's definitely on some true crime though. I mean, it's unfortunate. It's a part of true crime we don't really, you know, something awful has to happen for us to be telling these stories. But at the end of the day, it's a story that needs to be told because this is really sad because the judge makes a very interesting point or relevant point. She makes a point, period. At the end of this, that this young lady, this is someone who really fell through the cracks. A beautiful young girl who, whatever the set of circumstances were, the judge was like, I haven't heard mention of her father. I haven't heard mention of her mother. People were just kind of like, oh, we'll wait till tomorrow to report her missing. We'll look for her tomorrow. We'll wait for her to come home. Like the young lady was hanging out with a man who was almost 40 years old, who had a track record, a history, who's labeled as a serial PDFer, okay? And bad. Very, very sad set of circumstances. So this has been going on all week. They've been having a preliminary investigation or preliminary exam of the evidence because there has been no body found, but she's been missing for a year. And based on her patterns, based on the evidence that they do have, there's reason to believe that the young lady is deceased at the hands of this gentleman. I'm using that word loosely, this man, this individual by the name of Jarvis BUTTS. Now, I'll share all the links, and if you want me to broadcast it like on some late night or something, I can do that. But I just think that all of you, there's so much going on. This is something you can watch on your own. But this particular selection that I picked, which is like the last hour, it's basically what would seem like closing arguments if he were on trial. So the prosecution gives their case, his attorneys come back, state their piece, and then what's different is the judge, based on all of the evidence that has been presented. It's almost, I wouldn't say it's a grand jury. It's not a grand jury because there's no jury there. It's being presented to the judge. The judge is making the decision whether the case is going to be bound over for trial. So it's almost like a mini trial that they present to the judge. The judge makes the determination whether it's going to go to trial. And I don't know if they have, I'm assuming they have grand jury in Michigan, but this particular case was being heard by the judge, and the judge makes the decision. The judge gives a scathing commentary or a decision. She gives towards the end. It's absolutely, she dug into everybody. Everybody who failed this young lady got got put on notice. So it was really interesting if you hadn't seen it, and it's a little bit less traumatizing because what this girl went through, amongst others, is a lot. Is a lot. So I'm just gonna, yeah, she went through a lot. So, and you know what I'm saying, they've been doing this they did it all this week. So Monday through yesterday, basically all day. And then there was a day in November when it first started. But it's interesting. It's very interesting. I've gotten through the day in November, which maybe was like November 1st. And then whatever day it was in November, when his work partner, the guy who he called, this guy was calling people, asking people to hide phones, get rid of evidence, all kinds of stuff. This guy is totally out of order. Crazy. The funny thing is, too, I guess I'm jumping around. If we're gonna watch some testimony, I want to watch his friend. But we're not gonna do that today. We're gonna, yeah, King. King, when King stood up and they said, do you see Jarvis in the courtroom? He stood up, he was like, no. I was like, Stop it. You know that's him sitting over there by the lawyers. Maybe he couldn't see in his fairness. I don't know. I wasn't sitting where he was sitting, but yes, Cordell Wright, aka King, that was 11-1. So I watched that. I watched Monday. So I've been watching it. I jumped ahead because I wanted to know what happened yesterday, and I watched the last part of yesterday. So, girl, when he said he didn't see him, baby, I was like, they're with the shits. These people are with the shits. And that girl, these people didn't care. And let me just, this is what I'm going to say. There is a mentality, it's a mentality too, but there is, if you have young girls out here who have been, let's say, groomed early, or have been exposed to certain things. They got a ratchet older sister, whatever, however it happened. Sometimes older people who could be our age, even older, grannies, aunties, great aunties, whomever, people in the neighborhood, oh, she's fat. You know what I mean? People will say things like that, but you don't know how that person, what that person went through to get to where you have an opinion about that person. There is nowhere, no place, no shape, no form where a 12 and 13-year-old should be involved with a 30-plus-year-old man. That's not normal. Okay, that's not normal. It's not acceptable. And no matter what you think, something had to have happened awful to put this person in a situation where this became normal for them. Because most kids at 12 years old want to make TikTok videos. They want to dance. They want to learn how to use makeup. They're in school. They may like a boy who's around their age, things like that. Most young people are not interested in someone almost 3 times their age. That's not normal. There's nothing normal about that. And for anyone to have the opinion that is something, you got to check yourself out. There's no way, shape, or form that a young lady who hasn't even had a real chance, that adults should be formulating in their mind that it's okay for certain things for them to do because their mom's a certain way or whatever. You know what I mean? And I feel like she might have had some family like that kind of, I don't want to say threw her by the wayside, but weren't really checking for her like that and were kind of like okay with whatever she was doing. Because I'm just kind of like, how is a 12-year-old or 13-year-old not home and you're not calling any and everywhere looking for them? It just doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, if you want to hear about and I mean, just imagine when the trial happens, for as much as we've heard over the last 4 days, it's gonna be worse. This man, Mr. Butts, they say that he has violated a 4-year-old. He violated his own daughter. If you're gonna violate your own daughter, you're gonna definitely violate your girlfriends or your whomever, your girlfriend's niece, whatever it is going on, you're gonna do it. And he's already had that label on him. They knew what he was, right? Anyway, if you hadn't seen it, all of that being said, it's gross and all of that, but it is interesting. It's interesting from the standpoint, some of these things we need to see, and unfortunately in 2025 we have to expose ourselves to, because this type of information might help you save someone you love. I'm gonna just say it like that, because it's the naivety that has people thinking, oh, well, I mean, her mom was like that. That's even like a little bit of a naive behavior, because at the end of the day, these kids are being violated. I don't care. That type of thought process needs to be replaced with the knowledge that some of these kids are actually really being victimized, and the outcome is funeral plans and court dates. Okay, because people did not interfere, they did not interrupt, they did not ask questions. Maybe they were afraid of Jarvis. That's also a possibility. But it's funerals, investigations, searches, and heartache, pain, lots of tears, and now the judge getting into your ass, because the judge definitely did not hold back any words, letting the family know how much they failed this young lady, which I was like, say it. Okay, say it. Because, I mean, doesn't mean they don't love her, but either they were just too busy with the wrong things. Maybe they were too busy thinking the wrong things. Some people are just tired. Some people don't need to be raising kids. I'm just going to be honest. It doesn't mean they're a bad person, but they're tired. Maybe they've already raised a whole bunch, or maybe they just were never fit to raise children. Not that the kids are going to be in any danger, but just raising and rearing and supervising is not for you, because that kids don't raise themselves. So anyway, this it is triggering, it's upsetting. But you know, this is definitely, like I said, I think we talked about this on Monday for a little bit, or Tuesday, and I said I was going to come back with this, so here I am. Let's get into it. I think the part that I picked out for us to watch is very interesting, and you're going to hear the details, but you're not going to have to sit in it with long testimony and all of the things. But when the trial happens, baby, I think it's going to be absolutely disgusting, unless the man goes ahead and takes a plea, and if they offer him something, or he just goes ahead and puts in a guilty and spares everyone the trauma of having to listen to his nastiness. Okay, how nasty he was out here. Even the judge, she said, listening to the text messages between you and Naziah was absolutely disgusting. Just disgusting. This happened yesterday. This is after break, and the judge is coming back in. She's going to listen. So this is after 4 or almost 5 days of testimony, called a preliminary exam. So just think of it as almost like a little mini trial for the judge to determine whether they would move forward with a trial. That's it. That's all. Okay. And she's going to give her opinion. Girl, I'm trying to be nosy. Like, what y'all talking about? Okay, here comes the shackle shuffle. Here he comes, hobbling like somebody kicked him in the nuts at lunchtime. Look at him. That's Jarvis. Old PDF. Disgusting. Let me advance it a little bit.
Yeah, it's gonna adjourn.
People don't ask that.
Thank you for asking. Okay, we are back on the record. This is People of the State of Michigan versus Jarvis. BUTTS 2459617. Are the people ready for the bind of argument?
Yes, Judge, we are.
Okay, go right ahead.
So they're getting ready for what's called the bind over argument. So all of this stuff is Googleable, because I was like, what is this process? Because in some of the proceedings that I've watched, I've never heard of this specifically in Michigan. So you can kind of Google it, but it basically, just as I explained, this preliminary exam is to determine whether he will be bound over to trial. So that's basically what's happened. Again, it's similar to like a little bit of a mini trial.
Thank you. And before I get to
they admitted evidence. They had phone calls from the jail. The phone calls, baby. I'll forward the days of testimony, but this fool calling people, asking people to destroy evidence. So his witness tampering and people potentially putting themselves at risk for tampering with evidence, which most of the people did not do, was unbelievable.
Real issue on the homicide charge. I'm going to take care of a few preliminary matters. It is the people's intent to increase
Girl,
count
it's
3, which
crispy.
is currently
Very
criminal
crispy.
sexual conduct second degree, to criminal sexual conduct first degree, person under 13, defendant 17 years of age or older. We have the defendant's birthday on the record, and that would be based on the testimony of the one minor witness that testified, as well as Cordell Wright's testimony. The minor witness testified that it happened at the old shop, and when Miss Ripley was asking questions, she identified that as being the location. Cordell Wright testified back in November that they didn't move from that shop, which was at East Warren and Neff in the city of Detroit, until May or June. Based on Naziah's birthday, which is in her medical records, at that time she would have been 12 years old. And the minor witness testified clearly describing an act of penetration, specifically penis to anal opening. With respect to the criminal sexual, child sexually abusive activity, that would be based on the text messages as well as the minor's.
You heard that, 12 years old. This guy is disgusting.
Testimony as well. Combining those two things satisfies the elements of those charges. However, going to count 1 in murder in the first degree premeditated, I would like to go through and put some of the.
Let's do this first. I don't have the phone calls queued up for you, and I'm going to be honest with you. I guess the Cordell one we can listen to when the judge is done. I don't want to skip around because we'll skip around and then fuck around and not get done what I want, what I planned. But we will go see Cordell's testimony. I'll play Cordell's testimony. Let's see, what time is it? Cordell's testimony, I think, roughly lasted about an hour. The phone call's really not as interesting as you like. It's not on the level of like phone calls from prison. It's not giving like a key. It's it's like, hey, what up, my dude? Okay, blah blah blah. I ain't got no money on my books. I'm gonna need for you to go over there to my car and go way to the back seat and see. I need you to find my phone. I need you to check for my phone. Okay, I'll go look. Okay. Type stuff. Okay. So we'll go check it out. We'll check it out. But I want to do this first. I feel like this sets the groundwork for anybody who's watching that doesn't know anything about the case. If we jump into Cordell immediately, he's a guy that, you know what I mean? Like he's going to be talking about him and his friend who've got a mechanic shop and their shenanigans, but it's really not going to make sense. This is a good foundation to understand why we're even watching this at the moment. So just hang on for that. But it's not giving phone calls from prison, okay? And as far as calls moving forward, I don't know what that looks like. If that even gets released or not. Sometimes calls are just for the privy of trial and they hold on to that until trial's over. And this thing is just getting started because now he's been bound over for trial. Girl, they got excellent witnesses. I mean, little sis is missing. Little sis is missing and it doesn't look good. The clothes that she had was found in man, let me just say this too. So the young little lady, Miss Naziah, had on a particular outfit that is recalled by a few people, key people who knew what she had on that day. Baby, they found her clothes over there in the woods with holes in it, DNA on it, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, the calls are not giving phone calls from prison crisp, salacious, juicy. But it's just not. You know what I'm saying? But it is interesting. It helps move the testimony along, but it's not giving what, you know what I'm saying? It's not giving. Let's see. Okay. I just wanted to preface that because I didn't want to make, just because, you know, when I said that there are jail calls, I didn't want to make it sound like, oh yeah, they're really juicy. It's interesting because it's an additional layer, you know what I mean? So, okay.
Pieces together and hated. However, going to count 1 in murder in the first degree premeditated, I would like to go through and put some of the pieces together. And we are standing here today in court on January 9th, 2025, which is 1 year, almost to the minute, the last time Neziah was seen on a camera in the city of Detroit, which is on the screen now. The last time that she was seen was on January 9th, 2024 at 2:56, getting off of the bus at 3 Mile Drive in Cornwall and walking down Bedford. She was walking towards what she didn't know at the time would be Jarvis BUTTS and her ultimate murder by him. We take that moment in time and then go to Cordell Wright's testimony where he testified that they picked Neziah up on their way back to their shop at 9000 Connor, and they proceeded with her to that location. We have Jarvis BUTTS' sister's testimony, Tijuana BUTTS, who did say that she saw a young girl with a very descriptive and distinct jacket getting in and out of that car, the white Cadillac Escalade. That would have been before Jarvis, Cordell, and Neziah departed for Ypsilanti. We have Sergeant O'Rourke's testimony as to his cell phone locations based on cell tower information and the historical call detail records, which placed them consistent going out to Ypsilanti. And then we have Cordell's testimony getting them back to the shop. Talasha Moore also testified to seeing Neziah in Ypsilanti with Cordell and Jarvis. Cordell, as we know, testified that he had to get back to his house based on his tether hours by 9 p.m. And that is the last time that anyone who is not Jarvis BUTTS would see Neziah Harris alive. From the shop, we proceed out to the Park Crest Inn, where Jarvis BUTTS checked into a hotel at 9:30 p.m. And Sergeant O'Rourke's testimony corroborates this, placing his phone in the area of that 20,000 Harper address at around midnight till early in the next morning on the 10th, using the data that you see on the screen in those times. Recapping January 9th, this is the last time that we have any sort of communication from Neziah. There was, if you look at those messages that Sergeant Jones went through and read, just between Neziah and Jarvis, there was consistent and constant communication up until January 9th. There's also no messages from Jarvis after Neziah goes missing on the 9th, looking for her, seeing where she is, trying to find her, trying to help, as anyone should do at that time, her family locate her. There's no messages to her phone, to that Text Now account from Jarvis BUTTS' phone. Her legal guardian and grandmother, Annette Harris, has not seen any social media posts. The OIC of the case, Sergeant Jones, has not seen anything for a total of 1 year now. The Lieutenant George Harris, who was involved in the investigation in the first month, didn't see anything that he saw from social media or Text Now after the 9th. Jarvis BUTTS on the 9th, we know, borrowed Latricia Johnson's car overnight, which was unusual. He borrowed that and then again borrowed it on the 10th or 11th. We know that Neziah's glasses were found in that car sometime after the 10th or 11th when Latricia Johnson was at that shop, and Jarvis BUTTS snatches them out of her hand.
People who wear glasses don't not wear their glasses. This is a little girl who wore glasses all to see. And her glasses were found in the random back seat of someone's car. That's not, you know what I mean? That's not normal either. Those were her everyday glasses, and they were found in the back seat of a car that, like the prosecutor said, he randomly borrowed 2 days in a row. And what they think is potentially that he used that car to transport her to the place wherever he allegedly disposed of her.
From the Park Crest Inn and from January 9th, we go out to 7 Mile and Burke. This is by far the most important location in this case because we know that the defendant spent from 11:40 p.m. on the 10th to 1:34 a.m., nearly 2 hours in that area, in that wooded area where the Rouge River runs through. And to give, this is from the slideshow of the scene photos that were taken at 7 Mile and Bird. This is the area where it's the people's theory, Jarvis Butts did at least one of two things: either killed Nasiah at 7 Mile and Bird, but at the very least dumped her body in this location. We know this because of the evidence that was found there, specifically the black hoodie, which you see in this photo here, as well as the pink bodysuit and the shoes that we confirmed or that are hers based on the picture that the OIC received from her brother. And those items were collected. The black hoodie and pink jumpsuit were tested. And importantly, Rion Green testified as to which swabs were which. This analysis here and hypothesis and result pertains to the right shoulder swab on Nasiah Harris's black hoodie that she took that picture in when she was in school on January 9th. The one, importantly, that Annette Harris testified was in good condition when Nasiah left. We will get to pictures of that, but this shows that Nasiah Harris's DNA is there as well as Jarvis. And importantly, this is one of the stain swabs that was positive, not just for blood, but human blood based on the hemotrace results. In the next one, we have, this pertains to not the stain swabs, but the regular swab that Rion Green testified was a wearer ID swab. Importantly here, Jarvis Butts' DNA from that swab that would have been taken around the neck of that sweater or the end of the arms of that sweater is there with very strong support. And of course, Nasiah's DNA is there as well. And when we look at that sweater, specifically through the PowerPoint photos that Rion Green took and put together, we can see that there is a lot of markings on this. If the court looks closely on this, and I did, there are 15 phenol positive stain markings on this sweater. This is just the front of that sweater. And of course, the court paid attention and saw the markings or the damage to the hood, that it is the people's theory would have been stab wounds or something to that effect that happened when Jarvis Butts murdered Nasiah Harris. We also have to look, and it goes to the premeditation element as well as everything he did before at Jarvis.
So all those holes in that hoodie, and why wouldn't there be, maybe why isn't it like soaked in blood? Well, if it was sitting outside, if it rained, if it snowed, if it was in the snow, because it was January in Michigan, which we know Michigan is cold, and they definitely get snow and elements. It was near water, all of that type of stuff. It's possible, you know, I can't give an amount of days, and I'm not, you know, professional of that sort, but I can only imagine if it's sitting out in the elements and there is any type of snow, rain, anything like that, it's going to wash away some of it. But luckily, some of it was still there. But the rips and the tears and all of the things from what probably happened to her are there to give you a idea that, yeah, she probably was savagely brutalized, to say it like that.
His action, specifically what he did to.
This guy looks like Michael Ealy too. Am I getting the name right? You know Michael Ealy, the actor, the light-skinned guy with the gray-green eyes or whatever. If they like, he's giving me a little bit of Michael Ealy.
Attempt to conceal or cover up his role in the murder of Nasiah Harris. First, we have the glasses that he made sure he grabbed directly from Latricia Johnson's hands when shown, that are consistent with the glasses she had in the photo from the 9th when she was in school. We have the jail call to Cordell Wright to get that phone of his out of Miss Davis's car and into someone else's possession, which he testified he tried to do, but was ultimately unsuccessful. And then Sergeant Jones testified that they ultimately did recover that phone from Miss Davis's car. There's the phone call to Latricia Johnson, which was played when she was testifying, saying to get anything he touched clean, to clean anything he touched, to get anything, don't drive her car, drive his mom's car, which is important because when you combine her testimony of when Jarvis Butts took her car, those 2 times on the 9th and 10th, and then either the next day or that same day, it's important because that car is the car that he transported Neziah Harris out to 7 Mile and Bird to either dump her body or to murder and then dump her body there. And we can go through all of the lies that Jarvis Butts told any detective or any officer that he testified to, but in highlighting those, he denies to Detective Mays that he was with Neziah at all or had talked to Neziah at all on the 9th, denies ever picking her up, denies to, even when confronted with the January 9th messages, he said that it wasn't him initially. Obviously, we heard in the subsequent interviews, specifically on June 1st with the OIC, he came off of that. He told Shannon Harris that Neziah texted him on the 9th. She says that he never did that. And we have some of their messages in the record as well. He denies going to a hotel and denies going to a hotel with Neziah Harris and denies having any sort of sexual relationship with Neziah, even though the text now messages completely prove that that is an absolute lie. We also have his motive. We know from Sergeant Jones that he was going to be going into custody supposedly on January 9th for until roughly December, I believe, is what Sergeant Jones testified to. We know that that date was adjourned because he said in his interview that he had a legal issue. He said it was out in Clinton Township, but I submit to this court that that's not the legal issue he was talking about. He was talking about the legal issue he would have had if Neziah had been left alive. He had to make sure that when he was in custody that she was not going to give birth to any child of his. That's his motive in this case. That's why that's January 9th. Sentencing date was adjourned to February 7th so he could take care of that potential legal issue. He was being told consistently by Neziah throughout the months that she might be pregnant.
Okay, so let me just say this. So he was already on like a probation or something for having been a sexual predator before. So if Neziah had already bought into not telling anybody about their relationship, but there was a problem. Neziah potentially was pregnant or was pregnant. It was reported. They don't have any medical, like, there's no reports. She didn't go to a doctor. She didn't go to a clinic. It's just the actions and the text messages. This was the problem. She was pregnant. And as a convicted PDFer, you can't have a baby with a 12, 13-year-old, someone who was 12 at the time, because that is absolute evidence that you're in violation. And if he doesn't want to go back to jail again, well, that's going to be a problem. And of course, reading the text messages too, but a baby coming was a problem for him. So there were searches in his computer how to do kind of like a home termination, maybe drinking some concoctions, things of that nature to help the process of terminating the impending baby. That she said I don't think she was, there was some talk about, because I haven't gone through all of the testimony yet. There was talk that she hadn't been getting her period. But the family had her kind of out there bad. They had her out there bad. Nobody was really supervising. I don't think they were paying attention, as they should have. It was awful. So that's what they're talking about now. Jarvis, in his mind, was taking full advantage of this young lady. And I think I mentioned this once before, but I'm going to mention it again. He also had violated his own daughter. This guy is absolutely disgusting.
And then on 11/27, she says to him that it's hard to do this gym shit with this baby. Less than a week or 2 weeks later, he's searching on Google how to abort a baby, how to not just abort a baby or get an abortion, but how to do it at home, how to get rid of that without any medical professional or any responsible mandated reporter knowing about it. We clearly have that motive. And obviously, Judge, one of the big issues in this case is proving that Neziah Harris is dead without having a body. On January 9th, she vanished off the face of the earth. There is absolutely no evidence after the 9th that she was alive, that she was sending messages to anyone. Her, again, legal guardian had not seen her since the 9th. No one else, officers, friends, family have seen her since the 9th. There's no social media post reviewed by any officer to this day that would indicate she was alive. There's no messages, no further messages on text now after the 9th. There is a full and complete stop of any activity that would indicate she was alive. And Judge, I submit to this court that if that were the evidence that we had at this point, that would be enough at this point for a probable cause determination to show that she is in fact deceased today. However, there is more than that. Her hoodie found at 7 Mile and Berg, which we just saw a photo of, has Jarvis BUTTS' DNA on it and Neziah Harris's DNA on it, and it is covered in blood, indicating that something traumatic happened to her. And all the other evidence shows that something traumatic happened to her at the hands of Jarvis BUTTS. And then we go back to his motive, was told by Neziah that she was pregnant, searched all of the home abortion procedures, and was going to go into the Wayne County Jail until December, which we just passed, of 2024. Judge, I submit to this court that the evidence that you have heard over the last 4 days proves not only that Neziah Harris is currently deceased, but also that she was murdered by the defendant, who had plenty of motive to do so, had plenty of opportunity to do so, and he did that. And I will note that the defendant in this case, Jarvis BUTTS, does not get a break because he successfully hid her body. The evidence to a probable cause determination, which the question is she probably dead? And did the defendant probably do that? Both questions are answered with a yes, based on all of the evidence that you have seen. I would reserve any further argument for rebuttal. Thank you.
Pretty quick.
Thank you, Judge.
Sorry.
I know how well aware the court is that we have a very serious task here. We've been here for 4 days, and at this point, we have to look critically at what we've heard and what we've seen over the last 4 days and determine if there's enough evidence by a probable cause standard that Mr. BUTTS committed premeditated first-degree murder. And if you look critically at what the evidence is and the lack of connection between these pieces of alleged evidence, there is not even by a probable cause standard. To bind over on premeditated first-degree murder, there has to be sufficient facts or evidence to show by a probable cause standard that each of the elements of premeditated murder in the first degree were committed. First, there's got to be a death. There has to be evidence that the defendant caused the death of the deceased, that some action that he made or did caused that person's death, that there was an intent to kill, that the intent to kill was premeditated, and that it was deliberate. And here there is not enough evidence, even by a probable cause standard, that Jarvis BUTTS caused the death of Neziah Harris. There's been no testimony of any eyewitness stating that they saw Jarvis BUTTS doing any act that could have caused Neziah Harris's death. There's been no testimony of any eyewitness that they saw Jarvis BUTTS doing anything in preparation of doing something that could have caused her death. And there's been no admission of Mr. BUTTS to support that element. There's not probable cause to believe that Mr. BUTTS had an intent to kill Neziah Harris, nor that he premeditated her death. There's no evidence of any threats made by Mr. BUTTS to Neziah. There's no evidence of any threats made to a third party that he was going to do something or that he had a problem that he had to take care of. The issue or the statement was he had a legal matter. And Ms. Davis testified that she was aware of an issue that he had in Clinton Township and that she was the one that was driving him around to court. There's no testimony that he took any specific action in a deliberation to kill her, or that in killing her. There's Google searches about legal ways to abort a child, not how to kill somebody or dispose of a body. There's no evidence that he did anything related to the Google searches. There's no receipts of purchases or anything like that. And these text messages were 2 weeks after. They were, I believe, December 9th and 10th, which was, I believe, 2 weeks or 13 days from 11/27/23, which is the text message about gym class. And then there's this kind of cryptic text message in between that says it healed. We don't know what that means, but we don't know what Mr. Butts took that to mean. It doesn't necessarily mean that he believed she was pregnant. There's no evidence of a pregnancy. We have medical records until, I believe it's October of 2023, that don't indicate a pregnancy, that she had been to the doctor in September when she originally texts or messages Mr. Butts and says she thinks that she's pregnant. There's no evidence of a pregnancy. She went to the doctor. We heard from...
The way she says that is like she went to the doctor and you could infer she had a pregnancy test. No, I mean, kids go to the doctor. Kids go to the doctor once a year, twice a year, depending on, you know, if they take medication, things like that. Kids go to the doctor at minimum once a year, but maybe twice a year. The average doctor is not giving a kid a pregnancy test. I'm sure she did not sit there and tell the doctor she was pregnant. That is not a normal function in the pediatrician's office to give a 12-year-old a pregnancy test. And I hope that it never becomes that either. When you're a grown woman, they may ask you, is there a risk? Is there a possibility that you could be pregnant in the event they're giving you an x-ray or something like that? Or they might ask you when was your last period? And a girl her age, possibly they may ask her, have you started to menstruate yet? If so, when was your last period? That could trip her up. Now, a little girl who's not savvy and that wouldn't click right away, well, I haven't had it in a couple of months. Mom, excuse me, do you know about anything like that? That's just a regular question that a little girl could get tripped up on, if I'm thinking, right? But if she knew not to answer, or her period hadn't been gone for too long, it is not uncommon for 12-year-olds to have abnormal periods. So I don't know, but her saying that she's been to the doctor, and so what? That doesn't mean anything. The doctor may not have, these days in 2025, if you make an appointment for a flu, that's what they're seeing you for. They're not examining everything. It's not a physical. It's a sick appointment to see the symptoms regarding around this flu you called in about. They're not giving you any type of top to bottom situation. You are being seen for what you called in for, and that's it, and that's all. So her saying that the girl was seen, to me, is almost kind of like, so her last TikTok video, it was clear she was pregnant. I don't know how her granny didn't see that. My mom was checking pads every month. I can't say my mom checked pads, but I think a mother with 4 daughters probably expected, and back when girls stay free, remember old school, any of you guys who are in your 40s or 50, girl, 40s and over, old school stay free, and Always, I think Always was the first ones that came out where you had the little wrapper, right? And you could wrap it up and get rid of it real nice. Otherwise, you're wrapping up in tissue, right? I think being in a household with being one of 4 girls, I think it would have been more noticeable if something wasn't in the trash can, because I'm sure my mom was the one who was emptying all the trash cans typically, right? So, because my brother refused, and now thinking back, he probably didn't want to empty our trash cans because he probably was like, ew, because he was, he and my father were the only guys in the house, the 5 women, right? So, but yeah, something like that. Absolutely. You're going to notice things, and you're going to notice when you don't notice something, right? Either you're going to notice it or you're going to notice that something is missing, right? So unbelievable. It breaks my heart, you know. I hate that she had to be exposed to this type of a creep that helped himself to her like that, because this is a nightmare. But no one was there for her. And then she loved this guy. She had him saved in her phone as Bay for Life. Bay for Life. What did he do? Like, what did he do to her? Awful.
Both her guardian, her grandmother, and her aunt, Shannon Harris, who lived with her. No testimony from either of them that they suspected that she was pregnant, that there was any medical issues that they had to take care of because that would have caused them to think that she was pregnant. There was an insinuation, well, was she wearing baggy clothing? Was she wearing bigger clothing? There was no testimony that they had to go out and buy new clothes for her because her clothes didn't fit, or that she started wearing baggy clothing. She was wearing denim pants on the day that she disappeared. And there's no testimony that those were not pants that they had recently bought because she didn't fit into the clothing that she previously had. There's no evidence of any kind of plan. There's no messaging between Mr. Butts and Ms. Harris that indicates an escalation of animosity between the two of them. In fact, he essentially kind of starts to disengage. And so there's no written evidence that he had any kind of plan or any animosity toward her at that point. Our submission would be that he understood at that point that she wasn't pregnant and was disengaging. Let's talk about what we did see. So we know that Messiah got on her school bus around 2:45 on the 9th. She got off the bus a few minutes later, and then she was seen walking up Bedford. She was wearing at that point light color blue jeans, a black hoodie, and then a colorful coat with fur around the hood. There's some insinuation that somehow there was a plan that she would meet up with Mr. Butts, but the testimony of Mr. Wright was that they were driving around that afternoon back and forth to various auto parts stores, and I believe that they in fact had to go back to one kind of unplanned because they either missed something or there was an issue. And so to say that somehow Mr. Butts would have known that she would have been on that street at that specific time and that they would have been there at that specific time is quite a leap, considering they didn't know where they were going to be when, because they were doing all this driving around back and forth to various stores. Witnesses put Neziah at Mr. Butts' auto shop later that afternoon, and then in Ypsilanti with Mr. Butts and Cordell Wright, and Mr. Wright puts her back at the shop later that evening. But then we hear from Sergeant O'Rourke, who did all the cell phone mapping, that at 9 p.m., Mr. Butts was actually at 13662 Wilshire, which is his home, where Angel Leonard lives and where they have kids. So did Neziah go back with him to that house? And then at 9:30 is when he checks into the Park Crest Motel. Now, we don't know who was with him there, but there is no evidence that Neziah was ever there. They searched it. They took DNA. They took clippings of various things. They swabbed the shower drain, and there's no evidence that she was ever in that room. We did hear testimony that the Park Crest is a known place where Mr. Butts frequents and takes various lady friends for a rendezvous. It's much more possible and plausible that he took one of his lady friends there, than somebody who he was going to kill, right? He's going to a place where they know him. He's a frequent flyer there. And is he going to take somebody there where he would later, before he was going to kill them? That makes no sense. That is not logical. We heard then that after Mr. Butts left the Park Crest Motel, he went to 4 Alexandrine, which is Midtown, so kind of across town. And that's where his other girlfriend, Najeen Rushing, lives. So did he take Neziah with him there to see Miss Rushing? And he stays there for a while, I think, according to.
Look, let me just say this. All I got to say is Stefan Starnes. We know Stefan Starnes drove around with Madeline Soto for some hours, okay? Allegedly. It's been alleged, it's in the documents. What they think is that when he left the condos, Stefan Starnes had Madeline up in that car and rode around with her in the car, moved her to the trunk. She was in the vehicle. So, yes, like I don't understand how this lady is even talking and thinking that she's making sense, that it doesn't make sense that somebody could drive around with a deceased person in a vehicle. Like, duh. Are you kidding me? Like, I'm thinking to myself, are you really trying to say that people don't drive around with deceased folk in cars? I couldn't believe that she said that that's just not possible, or like that just doesn't happen. It happens more than we want to know.
Sergeant O'Rourke's mapping, and then we hear that he is at 7 Mile and Berg on January the 10th at 11:40 p.m. for over an hour. That's almost 24 hours from when he initially. It's beyond 24 hours from when he initially.
What about that case we watched a couple of weeks ago with the guy in Vermont who took out again, a little bit older guy, not, he was about twice the age of his wife, but he had taken out his wife in their motor van, in their van life van, and went in, visited with his sister, went to breakfast, enjoyed his visit. Meanwhile, his wife was deceased in the van for several days, okay? While he's visiting all the friends in Vermont. Baby, you can't account for crazy.
Is with Neziah, or when he's last with Neziah. And so it's illogical to think that he was driving around with Neziah, visiting all of his girlfriends, or if he had done something to her previously, that she was in the car with him while he did that. And in fact, they took a cadaver dog around the car and didn't find anything. And they tested the vehicles, all of his vehicles, every car that he drove, for DNA, for any sign that Neziah had been in there, and they found nothing. And the call to Miss Johnson asking her to wipe down the Sentra that she used, that he had borrowed, is kind of irrelevant because she testified that she didn't do it. That she did nothing based on what he called to say, and they still didn't, nothing was found. We heard about a pink jumpsuit that was found. We didn't hear any testimony that anybody saw.
Calling and asking someone to tamper with evidence is not irrelevant. It's still showing a sign of guilt. Nobody who's not concerned, it's not like, it's like, oh, you know what? I know you're having company. Can you make sure to clean the house? No, it was, I need for anywhere I was, wipe it down. I don't need any trace of me in that vehicle. Can you make sure? Like, come on now. You sound slow, lady. You sound really slow.
Neziah wearing this pink jumpsuit. She's not seen wearing it in any video. I don't believe that anybody even identified it as being hers. I don't believe there was any testimony from either Annette Harris or Shannon Harris stating, yes, we recognize that pink jumpsuit. That's something that Neziah wears. When did she have it? There was one blood stain on that jumpsuit. And the testimony from the forensic analyst, Rion Green, was that it was such a small stain that she was afraid she would consume it if she did additional testing. She tested it once and couldn't do any follow-up testing or confirmatory testing because she was afraid they were going to consume the sample. There was also no statistically significant support for finding Mr. Butt's DNA on that stain sample from the pink jumpsuit. And there was no statistically significant probability that his DNA was on the jumpsuit at all, that he had had any contact with the jumpsuit. And they took a lot of swabs of that jumpsuit. I believe the number was that forensic analyst Anderson testified to, that it was 24 trillion times more likely to have originated from two unrelated unknown contributors than Jarvis BUTTS. Then we heard about the black hoodie. And that black hoodie was significantly more weathered than
She's
pink
the
jumpsuit.
worst.
We heard about that from
She's not the
the Border
worst
Patrol Agent
because
Barnes
girl,
and
Cordell
other folks that
Lewis,
came into contact
baby,
with that,
he was
that
pretty
sweatshirt,
bad.
that it
But
looked like it had been out in the weather much longer.
ma'am
And
is
we don't
not
have an
making
explanation for
compelling
that.
arguments.
But those appear to be tears in the top of the hood. They don't appear to be stab wounds, and they certainly don't appear to be bullet holes. There's weak support for conclusion that Mr. Butts.
She really needs to have her woman, female, girl club. You know, she deserves to be stripped of it all, because it's like, ma'am, you can't, are you listening to yourself? First of all, your arguments are bad. But second of all, come on, the little girl was 13 years old. And your client is a PDFer. Period. He violated his own daughter. Even look at his other lawyer, look like he's about to fall asleep. That man looks like he is sleeping. Do you see that? He's not even interested. He's ready to go clock out and go work on the other case. Whatever the other case is he has going on. Unbelievable, right?
Was a contributor to the stain and the swabs of the black hoodie. The only real support for any DNA on the black hoodie was on the non-stained part. And there's testimony that Ms. Harris was wearing that hoodie on the 9th, that she was in Mr. Butts' Escalade when he and Mr. Wright picked her up after seeing her walking down Harper, that they were in the car driving in up to Ypsilanti. And so the possibility that his DNA got on this non-stained part of the black hoodie is not evidence of premeditated murder in the context of all of the ways that we heard somebody's DNA can get on a piece of clothing. And I kind of talked about this, but we heard testimony that Mr. Butts drove both a Cadillac Escalade and a Nissan Sentra on January 9th and January 10th. There's a lot of pieces of those cars that were tested. Trunk carpet from various areas in both cars, the driver's floor mat, the driver's seat, the door handle, trunk speakers, the trunk frame. All of those things were swabbed for blood and nothing was found. We heard about a school ID card that belonged to Naziah. We heard Valerie Smith testify that she noticed it at some point in February, maybe a month or so after Naziah was last seen, and that she decided to pick it up 2.5 weeks after she first spotted it. But she was pretty clear that she only noticed it about 2 weeks before, but that she looked at it every single day. Seemingly, if it had been there before then, she would have noticed it. When did it get there? We don't know. There was no evidence. There's no testimony as to that. And there was no other evidence found in the 7 Mile and Greenfield area, and there's no evidence that Mr. Butts was there. We talked a little bit about the medical records, but all they tell us is that Naziah Harris didn't have a life-threatening condition as of October 24th. They don't tell us anything about her physical condition between the 24th and the 9th, and they don't tell us that she was pregnant. They're just not relevant, except for the fact, I guess, that they don't tell us that she was pregnant, and she was there on September the 27th, according to her text messages. What we haven't heard in the last 3 to 4 days is anything about a murder weapon. We've heard that they collected guns, but we don't know if any of them actually operated, and they tested them for DNA, and there was nothing found. When did those guns get taken from a house? When did they get put back, if any of them had been used? And I mean, we just simply don't have any evidence as to whether they were even touched by Mr. Butts. But certainly there was no DNA from Ms. Harris on them. And if one was to use a gun to bludgeon somebody enough where they break the skin and bleed, there's going to be DNA on that gun. If somebody is shot at close range by a gun, there's likely to be DNA on that gun. They found no DNA on a gun. There was initially testimony about all these knives that were found. And then when Mr. Riggins did a little bit of digging, well, one of them was a butter knife. One of them was rusted and under a seat and looked like it had been there forever. There's only one knife that they were actually interested in. They sent it for testing and there was nothing on it. And we know that they can test for blood even if something has been wiped clean, because they do that, and in fact they did that in this case. They found no blood on anything that the prosecution is positing could have been a murder weapon. Motive is not an element of premeditated homicide. There's evidence that Mr. Butts and Nasiah had a sexual relationship. And we are, at this point, not contesting the bind over on those counts. That would explain why Mr. Butts would not want to be honest about why he was with Nasiah Harris. That would be enough to make somebody want to lie about their whereabouts or their connection to somebody. There's no evidence that it went any further than that for him. No evidence that he had been confronted by anybody about a sexual assault. No evidence that he was being threatened by Nasiah to expose him or get him in trouble if he didn't do something that she wanted him to do. By the time January 9th rolled around, they weren't really speaking that much. She was, in those text messages that we heard, getting frustrated with him for ignoring her. But never once did she say, well, if you don't.
Well, he might have been moved on to the next victim. That's one reason. Number two, if he, in his sick way, had whatever type of feelings or connection with her, which I don't even want to understand, he probably was distancing himself because he knew that he had to handle some business. He knew he had to handle that business. And if he was still engaging with her to what got him into the trouble that he was in, because he got the young girl pregnant and it was going to be obvious, and he's probably going to catch some more felonies about this, and maybe the other truths would come out about his daughter and everything else. He was distancing himself. Duh. I mean, he doesn't get a cookie for distancing himself. Distancing himself was probably part of the plan.
Talk to me, I'm going to tell everybody what we've been doing. And so there's a complete lack of any motive for him to respond in that way. And I would point the court to a case, it's called People v. Fisher, and it's 193 Mishap 284. It's a 1992 case, and I've got copies.
1992?
Got it. Does court want?
You had to go back to 1992.
And I point the court to this case because it's a case where homicide was charged and no body was found. A woman named Joyce Fisher was killed, and I believe it was 8 years after her death, her husband was charged. He was convicted, and ultimately the appellate court reversed the conviction because the evidence was insufficient to submit the case to a jury. And so that was the error. And kind of the facts briefly are that Mr. and Mrs. Fisher were in the process of divorcing. It was a pretty contentious relationship. There had been lots of reports that he had been physically abusive to her. And she had even testified that he had threatened to kill her in mid-January of 1978, approximately 3 months before she disappeared. In April of 1978, apparently they were out together, they had lunch, and he was the last person to see her. After that, she disappeared. Now, there was no substantial testimony in that trial regarding her reliability, her long or short-term plans, that she had children, that she was devoted to them, and that she wouldn't have had any reason to run away or leave. And so that gave rise to an inference that she was deceased. The prosecutor in that case offered no evidence of an act that resulted in Joyce Fisher's death. And the court previously has held that the victim's body, while it's not necessary to establish.
Okay, right. So it's a stretch, because how about in 2024, you've got the case of Melanie Ferris. Is it Melody or Melanie Ferris, the lady who got convicted, the burn pile? Okay, come on now. I mean, they did find some some physical evidence, but there's many, many cases of people who have not been located and they have been able to have successful convictions. Now she's bringing some case from damn 32 years ago, talking about he got convicted, but it got turned over on appeal. So, okay, maybe you should have kept that one, because that's good to hold on to for if and when he gets convicted. If that happens, then you can turn that over to the appeal. But I don't think on its face for a preliminary is, I don't think that that's holding water. She's almost done. You got to hear the whole thing. But yeah, the judge, let's see where we are. Yeah. She probably has just a few more minutes.
Corpus delicti, there has to be something more. There has to be, in this case, either an admission or confession, physical evidence, or some kind of witness testimony. In that case, there was no physical evidence, such as bloodstains or a weapon, linking the defendant to Joyce's death. He did not admit that he killed her, although the prosecutor offered equivocal statements there, that he seemed to say, well, things didn't happen quite that way, and where it made it sound like maybe he did have something or some knowledge. The prosecutor there presented lots of evidence of defendant's motive and opportunity to kill her, but noted that those are not elements of the crime. And inferences, the court says, may not be based on evidence that is uncertain or speculative or merely raises a conjecture or a possibility. And they said, in that case, the evidence did not rise above the level of conjecture. And that's what we have here. We have conjecture. We have a lot of pieces of supposed evidence, but we have no connection. They don't connect to each other. They're puzzle pieces. When you put them together, there's no picture. There is no big picture, because there is no act that can be testified to that Mr. Butts did, and there's nothing to support that act. There's no evidence that he had a gun and used it. There's no evidence that he had a knife and used it. In fact, the evidence that the prosecutor put forward disputes those theories. The idea that Mr. Butts was in some cover-up, the issue of his phone, I think, was pretty well cleared up by Ms. Davis when she testified to the idea that for as long as she's known him, he's never wanted her to look at his phone. And mostly because he's been dealing with who knows how many other women. And that she had tried pretty much everything she could think of to get in that phone well before any of these allegations came about, and that she's never been able to. And so it makes sense that he would not want her to get in that phone, especially if he assumed he was coming home and wanted to have contact with her while he was serving his sentence in the Wayne County Jail, that she not know that she was not the only female he was dealing with. We acknowledge that probable cause is a low standard, but it isn't just limited to whether the prosecution has presented significant or sufficient evidence on each element of the offense, which we submit they have not. They also must determine that there's a reasonable ground of suspicion supported by circumstances sufficiently strong to warrant a cautious person to believe the accused is guilty. That definition of probable cause, or that characterization, comes from People v. Carter, which is 250 Mishap 510. And so you have to have both elements of the crime met, and also those elements have to be met by evidence that is sufficiently strong to believe that it is relevant, that it actually proves what it is saying that it proves. And here we have conjecture, we have speculation, we have supposition, and we have somebody who he did have something to hide. But there's no evidence that he did anything about that. He didn't threaten her. He didn't ask her, or say, if anybody finds out, that, I will go to jail, or you could go to jail, or you could be hurt. There was nothing like that in any of those conversations that we saw. So, Your Honor, even by the relatively low standard of probable cause, we'd submit that there is insufficient evidence.
Did she say so? Okay. She's awful. She's the worst. She's the worst.
Of both the idea that Mr. Butts did something to cause the death of Neziah Harris, and that he intended to kill her, or that intent to kill was premeditated. We don't know what happened when she left his shop on January the 9th around 9 o'clock. But I think it's safe to say we know she didn't go to his house where Angel Leonard was, or Angel Leonard would probably be here in court and telling us what a weird interaction she had with him and why it was strange that he wouldn't come inside the house or why he wouldn't let her outside the car where he was. We don't have any evidence that she went with him to the Park Rest Motel. We don't have any evidence that they were together beyond 8:30, 9 o'clock on January the 9th. And for that, we're asking the court to deny bind over on count 1, premeditated murder in the first degree.
Rebuttal?
Thank you, Judge. First, Judge, I'm going to start with talking about People v. Fisher that Ms. Quick just referenced. And it is important to note that this case is distinguishable for the following reasons. One, we're talking about a different standard. This was a trial issue, a directed verdict standard, where the court is saying at trial beyond a reasonable doubt. First of all and foremost, it's distinguishable for that reason. Secondly, though, the court in Fisher said, in this case, there was no physical evidence such as bloodstains or a weapon linking defendant to Joyce's death. In this case, we have bloodstains. We have bloodstains on the hoodie that was found at 7 Mile and Bird, where the defendant spent 2 hours on the night of the 10th going into the 11th. That places them together in the same spot and is very strong evidence that Neziah Harris is in fact dead. Secondly, though, Judge, having dealt with People v. Fisher, Ms. Quick talked about the 9th and 10th, that no one saw the defendant with Neziah for that day going into the 10th and into the 11th. However, we heard from one of his significant others or girlfriends that he was secretive, that he didn't want anyone looking at his phone. And we certainly know that he knows how to keep different women and or girls away from each other. For example, I believe it was Shannon Harris that testified that she was familiar with an address of Outer Drive in Belfort, but she had no idea other than the fact that she would pick the defendant up there at different times. We know through other testimony that the defendant was dating someone that lived there. And with respect to Ms. Quick saying that Neziah never threatened him, never did anything, I'm not sure if this one text message was highlighted by the OIC in this case when she testified, but on November 27th, 2023 at 23 hours and 37 minutes UTC time, Neziah said to the defendant, "When I see you, I'm a fuck you, tell you regret not answering my calls," which I would submit to this court is a threat. And then just over a month later, she says she goes missing at the hands of the defendant. And Ms. Quick also talked about the driving around that Cordell and Jarvis were doing and how it was an unplanned meetup with Neziah on the 9th. However, that may be true from Cordell's perspective, because he wouldn't have known what Jarvis's plan was at that time. But clearly on the 9th, send okay if you've seen the message so I can delete your number. And then the defendant's response, okay. And Jarvis was the one driving per Cordell's testimony. Now, Ms. Quick also talked about the knives and how the knives found in the defendant's car of the one that was tested came back negative, and that's true. We cannot dispute that. However, we know that that was more than a month after, giving the defendant plenty of time to clean it. But beyond that, Judge, this case is one where the defendant thought to, and successfully did, hide the body. And it's a common sense inference that if he thought to hide the body, he would also think to get rid of the murder weapon at the same time. And Judge, Ms. Quick is right. We are talking about a probable cause standard. And as I said, the question is, did the defendant with premeditation probably murder Neziah Harris? And I submit to this court that the answer is yes. And circumstantial evidence, as is noted in the jury instructions at trial court or in circuit court, is just as good as direct evidence. And yes, this is a circumstantial case, but when we put those circumstances together, including the physical evidence, the cell phone evidence, which I would equate with physical evidence for purposes of that, as well as the defendant's opportunity and motive, the picture becomes very clear that the defendant, Jarvis BUTTS, took the life of Neziah Harris to protect himself from the eventual discovery of his child that he was going to have with her, or at the very least thought he was going to have with her. I ask this court to bind over as charged with the addition or increase of this criminal sexual conduct second degree. Thank you.
As far as Fisher, I agree with the people that this case is distinguishable. This is a case regarding a trial. And the one thing I had highlighted in pink is the quote, in this case, there was no physical evidence such as blood stains or a weapon leaking defendant to Joyce's death. In this case, we don't have the same facts or circumstances. I do agree, this is a circumstantial case, and circumstantial evidence is sufficient for a bind over and even conviction. Today is January 9th, 2025, exactly 1 year, from the day Neziah Harris disappeared. Before I get into the charges, and the main charge of premeditated first-degree murder, I have to speak on Neziah Harris and the community who failed her. And I am only presented with certain evidence. I don't know the whole story. The attorneys know more than me, the family knows more than me. But from what I have heard over the last 4 days and 5 days total, is that several people failed her. I don't know where her mother is. I don't know anything other than that she was forced to live in a home where she was not protected or given the adequate attention and love. I don't know where her father is. I don't have any mention of him in her life, no presence. To Cordell, AKA King, and all the men who saw Jarvis BUTTS hanging out and always around these young girls, including Neziah, and his 9-year-old daughter going up to the shop to clean up his shop. The school counselor who never showed up, or the person who was supposed to show up if that counselor was absent, after Neziah was on the floor on the day she went missing, saying that she needed to speak to someone and speak to a counselor. There's no mention of CPS, but I wonder what their involvement was over the years, because this was not just a 1-year thing. There are text messages at least from 2022. To her adoptive grandmother, Annette Harris, whose testimony, in my opinion, was very questionable. I understand why the people put her on the stand to establish Neziah's residence and the houses on Bedford and the regular routine, to establish also that Neziah was not a runaway child, that she was not a bad kid. I do believe she adopted Neziah. I do believe that she had 6 kids in the house. I believe that Neziah had on a dark hoodie the day she went missing, and that she had on red and black Nikes that day. What is hard to believe is that the defendant never came into the house as she testified. And there was also a minor that testified that he did as well. Text messages that show between him and Neziah that he did in the basement, saying he was going to the shower, stealing her panties. He was always lurking around that house and asking for Janiyah and Zaniyah, from what I know. I even thought about the breakfast routine and saying that all the kids like eating breakfast at school. Did they have a choice? I don't know. But to always send those girls up there to clean up the shop raises questions. And how were there 2 women in that house who have birthed children themselves who did not notice that Neziah was pregnant, and I believe she was, and not having her period anymore? But then after hearing text messages today, begging Jarvis for pads as if she didn't have anyone else to give them for her. And what stood out the most was when Annette Harris stood on the stand, and she learned around 6 p.m. that Neziah did not come home from school, and said she looked around for her and decided to wait until the next morning to call the police. Without a tear, without emotion, or any expression of being devastated. And to her Aunt Shannon, who also showed no emotion, expression of being devastated from Naziah going missing. She stated that she had friends help look for Naziah, but was directed to just wait until the morning to call the police. A grown woman who likely suspected something strange going on didn't feel the need to call the police either. They were both able to go to sleep at night without hearing from Naziah or having any indication that she was coming home that night. And of course, the defendant, who I will get to in a minute. I don't know who else failed Naziah, but the community did. As far as the people establishing probable cause, I will focus on count 1 as it's been stated that there is no contention with counts 2 and 3. In count 3, I will amend based off of the motion and the testimony I heard that Naziah was 12 and not 13 at the time that Jarvis BUTTS had sexual intercourse with her. The prosecution is correct. You do not have to have a body to establish first-degree premeditated murder. It would have been a much shorter exam had her body been found, but this is where we are. In the last 365 days, no text messages. We all heard today and yesterday that she was very active and frequently texted. No social media for a year. We heard through testimony that she was also active on social media. No phone calls, which she was also able to do according to testimony. No physical sighting of her by anyone. She never came back to school. No one has seen her. Medical records dated from July 2014 to October 2023 indicated that she had no life-threatening medical issues that would lead to a natural cause of death. The black hoodie found in the area of 7 Muhlenberg with her DNA and blood on it. The holes in the hoodie consistent with some sort of struggle, violence, or weapon being used. And we know that there were no holes in that hoodie when she wore it to school. We saw a picture of her in a black hoodie on her last day that everyone saw her. I do believe her grandma testified truthfully about the sweatshirt that she had on and that was practically new. And the border agent who said that no evidence of animals would have destroyed the clothing or the shoes to possibly lead to animals tearing up that hoodie. The clear glasses found in the blue Nissan the day after she went missing. The behavior of the defendant when he snatched those glasses. They looked exactly like the glasses she had on in her last picture, according to the witness. The shoes that her brother described as the same shoes that were found also in the area of 7 Muhlenberg near the hoodie. While this is still probable cause, the evidence all points to Jarvis BUTTS. His locations, him being seen with her last, the abortion searches, the abrupt silence between the two of them in text messages, and the constant lies he told throughout the entire investigation. And they were proven to be lies with text messages and other testimony. We may never know what happened, but from what I heard today and over the last 4 or 5 days, it appears he intended to perform what he thought was a do-it-yourself abortion on Naziah. It went south, and instead of seeking medical attention for her, he intentionally killed her and tried his best to cover it up. As much as I want her to be alive today, there is at least probable cause to show and believe that she's dead and that she was murdered by Jarvis BUTTS. Mr. BUTTS, stand up. You've been sitting over there for 4 days with your head down, sitting between and behind your attorney with your mask on and taking vigorous notes. I want you to pay attention and listen to everything I have to say. I have been trying to figure out for the last 5 days, you. At one point, I thought you were cognitively impaired in the beginning of this exam. And then maybe you had the brain of a 10-year-old, and that's why you were doing such things. But as I heard more and more testimony, you're just the true definition of a pedophile. Watching you laugh and brag about all the women you have with different women and the children and the girlfriends, and making babies to groom them and having them in your presence, cleaning up your shop, and the little girls around you, has landed you here today. You groomed Naziah, You played mind games with her. We all heard that. You controlled her emotionally. She was exposed to so much at such a young age. The text messages between you two were disgusting to hear. And to think that she had you saved in her phone as bae for life. Desire deserves so much more. And while I mentioned other people that failed her, Jarvis Butts, you are the monster in this whole picture. She did deserve love from her parents and everyone who was in her life. She was ignored, she was neglected, and you took complete advantage of that. She wanted someone to love her, and she will never know what that feels like. Your children deserve more. As much as defense counsel has raised issues on count one, all that has done is raise the question of fact for the trier of fact, which means that this would be for a jury or a judge to hear in Third Circuit. I pray for the healing of all the victims and the young girls and possibly boys who have come into contact with you. As a community, we should look at this case as a prime example of how much work we have to do when it comes to protecting our children and especially our Black girls. I pray for closure and healing for all those who have been traumatized by you. And for you, Jarvis Butts, I wish you a speedy trial and that justice be delivered. Your bind over date is January 16th at 9:00 a.m. Anything else for the record?
For the people, Judge, thank you.
Not for defense.
She said the bind over is on the 16th. So I don't know. I'm assuming, is that when they say the bind over date? So I guess something is happening, whether that's the trial or preliminary or pretrial. Because, every state, they all operate differently. Some have some similarities or different terminology. So she said the bind over date was the 16th, which is a week from yesterday. So we'll have to see. I'll have to check. I will check the calendar to see what that looks like. So if that's when more is starting, but it's a very interesting case. I'll pull up King Cordell. But I definitely encourage you, go over to Fox 2 Detroit, and everything is there. The judge also streams on her YouTube channel, kind of like how Judge Manning has her channel. But the view is like of the whole court. It's like a camera up in the probably like up in the corner, and if you have a hard time focusing, like, baby, I couldn't. The sound was crispy, but the view looked like a game board or something. Like, I could not. I'm like, okay, there's the judge, there's the witness. You couldn't really see as well as you can with these TV cameras. But yeah, isn't this crazy? I wanted to show this first because if we would have just watched Cordell's testimony, it would have meant nothing to you. So any of you who didn't know anything about the case, now I feel like you know something about what's going on, rather than nothing. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, who is this guy and what is he talking about and what does this mean to me? That's why we went kind of in reverse. Anyway, but yeah, Judge was not playing. There's too much evidence for there to not be a bind over, for there to not be a trial. So, and this man he's habitual at this point. This is not his first time abusing a child, and grooming a young lady. And this could be the first time that he has unalived someone. That could very well be true. But we don't know that. Anytime someone says, well, they don't have a record of that, and that just means to me they have not been caught. That's just what that means to me. I don't take that as like, oh, okay, yeah, they must be good then. No, that just means they haven't been caught. So let me see if I can find Cordell. When did I watch Cordell? Was that yesterday or the day before? Let's see. Mm. Mm. I hope let's see. This might not be it. Just a second. Just a second. Okay, let me.
Was getting ready to try,
Just a
wondering
second.
how
I'll
they
find
spent their
Cordell,
last
but
weeks, their last days, their last hours, and their last minutes of their lives. What were they thinking about? Did they know that the end was near? And if it was someone they knew, what must they have been thinking as they were shot, stabbed, or whatever mechanism of death was used and confronted them with by the person they knew or loved? I can't imagine the thoughts that goes through their minds. But it's always, always 1,000 times worse when the person is a child or a baby, someone in the dawn of their lives who have begun to live their lives. The picture behind me is of Zanaya, and that will always be haunting because it was taken just a short time before the evidence shows that she was never seen or heard from again. It was taken by Nazaya herself, a selfie. That's the last known picture that we know about of her. And it was pointed out to me by one of the detectives on this case and by one of the prosecutors. She is smiling and waving and saying hello. But little did she know that she was really saying goodbye. We will provide to you later a very skeleton timeline of the time right before her death, before and after. Of course, the detail will be provided in court. The evidence shows overwhelmingly in this case that she is in fact deceased. The time she was seen alive was January the 9th of this year, 2024. Her missing status was reported to the Detroit Public School Police Department by her grandmother on that very day when she never returned home from school. And again, that was January the 9th of 2024. In early February of 2024, the case was turned over to the that should have happened right away, but they began investigating immediately. The evidence will further show that through text messages that we know and that we have, Zanaya and this defendant were to school on January the 9th. We know that she did indeed meet up with the defendant that we're charging in this case. We also know that several people close to Mr. BUTTS, who we were charging later, saw them together in several different locations, people that he knew well. We have evidence that at 9:30 p.m. on that day, that Mr. BUTTS checked into a motel and that Zanaya was never seen or heard from again. Not from her family, not from her schoolmates, not from her friends, not from social media where she was extremely active with her friends, not from teachers, no one. We know that she had no medical conditions that would cause a life-threatening medical emergency to her. And he, again, was the last person that saw her alive. She would have turned 14 years old just 10 days ago on September the 16th of 2024. And again, no one has seen or heard from her. You look at that face and you do not see the horrors that she had gone through in her short life. The exploitation, the molestations, the sexual abuse, and the pregnancy that she was concealing. The evidence will show that from one of her text messages to and with Jarvis BUTTS. And we also know, the evidence will show, that there's no evidence of anyone else being the father of that child other than the defendant, and he knew she was pregnant. We know that he was also searching for ways to abort the baby. We know that sexually explicit photos were requested by him of her and that she complied and sent them to her. All at the hands, we allege, the man we are charging with her death and also her long-term sexual abuse. In our warrant review process that Matt and Tina and others put together, excellent work on that. Video of 111 gigabytes, witnesses and witness statements, body-worn camera, and let me not forget, it was Tina and Matt's memo, but the work of the Detroit Police Department. Anyway, we reviewed 111 gigabytes of video, witnesses and witness statements, body-worn camera footage, surveillance video, police reports, documents, 19 gigabytes, medical records, search warrant returns, phone extractions, which came to 506 gigabytes. Today, we are charging Jarvis BUTTS with 1 count of first-degree premeditated murder, 1 count of criminal sexual conduct in the second degree, and 1 count of child sexually abusive material. Today, we are also charging Mr. BUTTS with more counts of criminal sexual conduct on 2 more girls, yes, girls, on 2 other separate cases. The girls in question now are 20 and 11 respectively today, but both were under the age of 13 years old at the time the offenses occurred that we're charging. We are charging that one victim who is now 20 years old, that from April of 2012 to April of 2014, alleged that defendant BUTTS sexually assaulted the victim at a residence in Detroit. Further facts and evidence on that matter will be placed on the record at the preliminary examination. In that case, we charge Mr. BUTTS with criminal sexual conduct, 1 count in the first degree, person under 13, defendant 17 or older. In that case, we are also charging Mr. BUTTS with 3 counts of criminal sexual conduct in the second degree, person under 13, defendant 17 years or older. In the second criminal sexual conduct case, well, I guess the third that we're charging today, we are alleging that the victim, who is now 13 years old, that from July 2015 through July 2017, we're alleging that he sexually assaulted the victim at a residence in Detroit. And again, further facts and evidence will be developed at the preliminary examination. Defendant BUTTS have been charged with, in that case, 1 count of criminal sexual conduct in the second degree. Child under the age of 13, Mr. BUTTS over the age of 17. Based on all the evidence that I've laid out now and much more that will be shown later in court, based on all these cases, we will present in court Mr. BUTTS targeted and befriended women who had to have sexual relationships with their young daughters. He would have relationships with their mothers, but his true desire was to have sex with their young daughters.
Let me stop right there because, you know, we talk about that all the time on my other channel, Mom's Boyfriend. And I'm not just picking on men here because there's some weird shit that happens with some women too who hold resentment towards a man's children and things like that. But that's not what we're talking about right now. We're talking about mom's ratchet ass, nasty boyfriend. And there are men out here who specifically target very thirsty females or very busy people who want babysitters and lovers all rolled up in one. Like, just it's negligence. It really is. It's giving people who are not the father, because I mean, even in this case, the father is creepy too. But unfortunately, there are people who have children with people that they don't know well enough. And some of these people are criminals and the worst kind. And even it's so sad to think that you can't even trust your own father to do the right thing, that there are people like that out here amongst us, that even your own blood you have to be protected from. Okay. But just absolutely disgusting. I'm gonna let her go for another minute or two because she's laying down the groundwork for what we're seeing right now. But on top, I did find Cordell's video finally. And I'll play that too. So if you guys are up for it, make sure to hit the like button for me. Hit the like, hit the like, hit the like. You'll hear the testimony in the preliminary exam from Jarvis BUTTS' business partner. If you can believe it, this man held down a business. They had some sort of like mechanic shop, and it sounded like there was shenanigans going on. And you're going to hear the phone call where Jarvis asks him to hide evidence. And if you guys want to hear more, I know some people mentioned the sister and the grandmother. I can pull specifically those, but it's 4 days of testimony. If you wanted to binge watch over the weekend, most of the, I don't want to say most of the Detroit stations, but like CBS, Detroit, and Fox Detroit, and another one, Click on Detroit, all have it, and I'm sure there's others where you can find all of it. So okay, I'm gonna let the district attorney, Miss Worthy, go a little longer, and then we'll flip over to Cordell.
That's what the evidence will show. He was a classic and expert groomer and pedophile. It's incredibly sad, incredibly unspeakable, and we want to bring justice to her and her family. I have to take this moment to say something to you, and this is not directed at all at Naziah's family, who by all accounts had many in her family that truly loved her. This is directed to everyone else listening to me now. We must be very careful who we let into our hearts and our homes and our lives, especially if you have children. We must be very careful who we have around our children and elders respectively. We must also be very careful who we leave our children with, even if they are in a relationship partners, family, and friend. I'll say that again, even if they are relationship partners, families, or friends. Life can be hard enough at times, but when it comes to our children, we must be diligent and laser focused on their safety. And sometimes we must make decisions about them and their lives that we may not like and that they may not like, but it's for the betterment of them and their safety and their future.
I'm going to pivot off of this because the video quality is not great. All right, let's go over here. So this, oh God, I keep hitting the wrong button. Hold on. Just a second. On my Mac, it like flips from Mac to PC. The buttons, let's see. Share. Okay, here we go. Okay, so his hair was a little fuller here. He gives me Michael Ealy, I swear to God. Anyway, all right, this is on Fox Detroit, and this was 2 months ago. I said 3 months ago, but I meant, I don't know. It's November 1st, so December. Okay, so it was 2 months ago, a little over 2. And this is the first day of his hearing, and let me scooch over here, and you're going to see some of the people in the gallery. Now, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna lie. Some of the people who are sitting in there crying, not at this moment, but some of the family, it's like, come on, y'all sitting up there crying because y'all feel bad because y'all failed Naziah. You know, it's sad. Not to say that they're not sad and they don't feel shame or anything, but at the end of the day, it's like, okay. Anyway, this is Cordell. This is who the PDFer was in business with. And let's just listen to this. This is some interesting testimony. And yeah. And notice his ass is in jail himself. Now, I was thinking about this. I don't think they asked him when he was on the stand what he's on with these two. What he is in for versus Jarvis. But while this is playing, I will go to Wayne County and look him up. So just give me a minute. I'll look it up and see what shenanigans he's been up to.
Stand right here, Mr. Wright. Face the judge. Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Watch your step. Could you spell his first name for me?
Cordell.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, Mr. Wright.
Good morning.
And Mr. Wright, do you have a nickname?
Yes.
And what's your nickname?
King.
Is that King?
Yes, ma'am.
What was Cordell's last name again, y'all? King is his nickname. What was was it Wright? Hold on.
Could you spell his first name for me?
Cordell.
All they did was spell his first name.
Thank you, Judge.
Cordell Wright. Okay, thank you.
Good morning.
And Mr. Wright, do you have a nickname?
Yes.
And what's your nickname?
King.
Is that King?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. How old are you?
37.
When's your birthday?
11/17.
What year?
86.
And Mr. Wright, back in January 2024, were you on an MDOC tether?
Yes, I was.
And what dates were you on tether from?
From March 14th, 23 to March 28th of 24.
So you know when they say tether, that means an ankle monitor. Remember, like Pam has said, remember when they say, oh, you're going to have an ankle monitor? And she says, oh, we call it a tether here. So as soon as I heard tether, I thought of Pam. But when she said, were you on a whatever tether, sir was already on an ankle monitor. Okay.
I could leave the house from 6 in the morning. I had to be back in by 9 p.m.
Mr. Wright, do you know someone named Jarvis BUTTS?
Yes, I do.
How do you know Jarvis BUTTS?
I first met him. We worked together at a shop called Frank's, and then we owned the shop together.
And do you see Jarvis BUTTS in the courtroom today?
No.
Would you be able to stand up so you can look around?
Yes.
Why does he say he didn't see Jarvis when Jarvis is in there?
No.
Okay, look at the judge. The judge is like, okay, y'all with the shits, okay? Because look where he's sitting. And then we saw Jarvis come in. Jarvis was right here. All right, Jarvis is sitting right there behind his lawyers. Maybe he couldn't see him, but it's like, come on, sir. He's sitting right back there in the green scrubs, right behind his lawyers. But he failed to identify him in the court. Now, maybe he doesn't want to seem like a snitch. I don't know. But he's getting ready to tell all the tea. So I don't know why he wouldn't bother to, unless he doesn't recognize him. Now, Jarvis did have long hair once upon a time. Like back in the day, how Snoop used to wear those two little braids off to the side. Jarvis had longer hair. But you know what that dude looks like.
When did you meet Mr. BUTTS?
2018.
And you said you two worked together initially at a place called Frank's?
Frank's.
All right. Where was Frank's at?
He has a couple locations. He has 7, but the one I met him at was on Warren and Neff.
Warren and Neff. Okay. And what locations of Frank's did you work at with Mr. BUTTS?
Warren and Neff.
May I approach?
Yes.
And Mr. Wright, I'm approaching those proposed exhibits 4, 5, and 6.
Okay, I got Cordell pulled up. Hold on a second. Okay, can y'all see this? Let me see. Oh, oh God. Y'all, I'm on my Mac, and the Mac functions for some reason in StreamYard are flip-flop. So my bad. I keep hitting like on autopilot the button I would normally hit if I'm on my PC, but it's flip-flop. Okay, there's Cordell, and then here is his record. So let's see. I don't know what he's in there for. Cordell Wright. I see Cordell Wright, Cordell Wright. Hopefully this is the right Cordell Wright. I'm going to have to keep looking because these cases don't look current enough. These are some 2019. Let me do some other searches and see. But if this is the Cordell, he said they met initially in 2018. If this is the right Cordell, you guys can see what's going on here. Okay, let me do some other searches just to make sure. Maybe there's something in some other places, or maybe it's a parole violation. Okay, so if it's a parole violation, it's probably on some of this. So he's got some DV, larceny, assault with a dangerous weapon, sir, problematic, but not leading up to what his friend is there for. But a lot of people, some people will have a slow burn of crime, right? So because some of these things will lead to the reason why Jarvis Butts is sitting up in there. Okay, so now we got another picture of Cordell. It was a parole violation and possibly on something of what we're seeing here on the screen. Okay.
Can you look at these and tell me if you recognize those?
I recognize this one, and this one.
And those are those a fair and accurate depiction of the Frank's Auto Shops? At least two of them on Warren and the other one maybe on Harper.
Yes.
Okay, which is the one that's on Harper?
Okay,
The last one on the
DMV.
inside.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
and that's
interesting.
Proposed exhibit 6.
Yes.
Okay, you're not with the admission of people's 4, 5, and 6.
The objection, no objection. They'll be admitted as people's exhibits 4, 5, and 6.
So that being said, this is the first day of the preliminary exam, and this is witness number 1. So this is the beginning. But after him, it doesn't come back until this past Monday. Why? Maybe because it was the holidays and the calendar was full. And like she said, because of the nature of this case, it needed 5 days, and maybe they couldn't get a consecutive calendar, being that they're trying to probably close some business before the end of the year and had to bring it up to after the holidays, which is when they started on Monday, right? So we'll start with Cordell, and then there's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and yesterday, which we saw the last part of yesterday when we started off.
How long did you work at Frank's with Mr. Butts?
A few years.
About how many years would you estimate?
2.
And when did that change from Frank's to another shop?
Maybe in 23 sometime.
Okay. Would it be earlier in the year or later in the year?
Maybe maybe in May. Well, maybe April, May.
And then where did you guys work then?
We got a shop together on 9,000 Connor.
And what is at 9,000 Connor?
A sicko, a car wash, and our shop was in the middle of both.
Your name, address?
Yes.
Spirit, I'm handing you what's marked for people proposed exhibits 7 and 8. Can you look at those and tell me if you recognize them?
Yes, I recognize.
Okay. And are those a fair and accurate depiction of your shop at 9000 Connor?
Yes, it is.
And are not with the admission that people's proposed exhibits 7 and 8?
No objection. They'll be admitted as people's exhibits 7 and 8.
Thank you. Who did you, and who was it that you mainly worked with at 9000 Connor?
I'm sorry.
Who was it that you worked with at 9000 Connor?
Jarvis.
I want to take you back to when you were working at Frank's with Mr. Butts. Did you ever see Mr. Butts with any children there?
Yes.
And specifically, did you see him with any young girl children?
Yes.
And did you know who those were?
Yes.
Who were they? Who were they?
His daughter, his niece.
Daughters and niece. What about any boys?
Yes.
Okay. And who were they?
His sons.
How often would you see him with children there at Frank's?
Sporadically.
And at 9000 Connor, did you see Mr. Butts with any children then?
Yes.
Any girls?
Yes.
And who would they be?
His daughter.
And what about any boys?
Yes.
Who would they be?
His sons.
And how often would you see him with children at 9000 Connor?
Sporadic.
And as it relates to this case, it's fair to say that you spoke with Detroit police a few times,
Yes, about 4.
about 4 times. Okay. That first time that you talked to Detroit police, do you recall about when that was?
The first time was the day before Valentine's Day, so like February 13th.
February 13th, and is that of 2024?
Yes.
All right. And at that time, were you presented with a jail call?
Yes.
Okay. And who was that jail call with?
Jarvis.
Okay. And who was he talking to?
Me.
All right. And what was the topic of that jail call?
He called to ask would I receive a cell phone out of a truck for him.
And were you familiar with what truck he was asking you to get it from?
Yes.
What truck was that?
It was a Z71 Chevy Suburban.
And did you know who that truck belonged to?
Yeah, his baby mom or somebody he was dealing with.
His baby mom or someone he was
And
dealing
do you
with.
recall,
Okay.
Listening to that jail call.
Yeah, I recall.
Let me just interrupt for a second, guys. Hold on a second. Let me just interrupt. Girl, I had to pull this up. 200 passengers use emergency slides to evacuate Delta flight in Atlanta after aborted takeoff. You know, school was canceled here today in anticipation of snow coming. They said about 200 people were evacuated from a Delta flight at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport following an aborted takeoff on Friday, according to the airline. At 9:10 a.m., the passengers used emergency slides. How scary is that? I would have been like, I'm so scared. Because I'm low-key a little bit afraid of heights. Because I got to think twice even before I get on an escalator. I'm telling you. Passengers used emergency slides to deplane Flight 2668, which was headed to Minneapolis, Minnesota. Passengers were then taken from the tarmac to the terminal. Girl, you should see the people running. They're running from the plane, and it's snowing in Atlanta. So it looks crazy because I was like, wow. Let me just show you guys. Hold on. Can y'all see?
A/B test with TubeBuddy. Maximize your channel's.
Y'all look. That doesn't even like it's the weather for me. I hope we don't get it bad like that. I pray to God. Okay. I just ooh.
A/B test with two buddies. Maximize your
Okay, hold on a second. Let me get rid of that tab. Okay, let's get back to Mr. Cordell. Um Cordell looked like he got a fresh shave and a fresh cut for today. Is that not crazy? The weather in Atlanta. Yeah, it's coming this way. Hopefully it's not going to be so bad. I'm back here in my office, so I can't even see what's going on outside. But I got a Sam's pick. As soon as this live is over, I gotta go run over to Sam's. Thank God I did all my grocery shopping yesterday. But let's get back into it. Anybody down here in the Southeast, be safe because we're not typically used to this type of weather. Even though I am a Jersey girl, at the end of the day, sis been down here for a minute and super spoiled. Okay. So I'm, I'll be home. I know I get very nervous. Let me tell you,
Bye.
if you got, so Bergen County, if you know, so my sister back in the day, she fell down the escalator at Riverside Square. So back in the day, I mean, the structure of the place is still the same. They've done some modifications, but one of the main high up escalators, um, she was on the escalator right about the middle, coming down to the main floor, and the escalator malfunctioned and literally stopped midstream, and she fell down the fucking escalator, her and a bunch of other people. And luckily that wasn't like that wasn't the worst of it, but she ended up having some dental damage. She ended up having some damage to her face and her mouth. But it was all fixed and everything was taken care of. But I think like secondhand, it gave me terror about escalators. So after that happened to her, I have been terrified of escalators ever since because I my sister fell down, like it can malfunction. And so yeah, awful, right? All right, back to the business.
I would move to admit the jail call from Wages
Ooh, gee.
2024 between Mr. Wright and Mr. Jarvis.
As soon as we're done, I'm gonna go run to Sam's.
Sorry, that's exhibit number 1. Thank you, Judge. And may I publish? Yes, I mean, co-host. Thank you, Judge. And for the record, I am playing people's exhibit 1.
That's it. This is a one-time free 3-minute call from an inmate at Woody County Jail. Your phone is not set to collect calls. This call has been provided by Helmet as a courtesy for friends and family. You cannot receive additional calls from this inmate until you receive it. We can take your credit or debit card information over the phone and connect you immediately back to your phone. This call is subject to recording and monitoring. Press 1 to accept all communications from this. Thank you for using Helmet.
My guy, what's up, man?
Nah, shit, man. What's happening?
Nah, shit, man. How you feeling? My bad, I missed your call. I was working like a motherfucker.
I figured they said you was up there banging, said something banging.
Yeah, you know it.
What's up, my nigga? What's up, what's up, boy?
You know it.
And shit. Man, I'm calling, man. You bitch, they put my money on my fucking books, bro.
Oh yeah, take a minute for them to put that shit on there, even if you walk in with it, man, they be playing it crazy. I swear to God, hey, you got a machine and shit. You show you straight, you need something. I mean, I'm gonna come out to that.
I have money on my books, nigga. I came in with money.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so they put this shit on my hookup. I was up on the tablet. I get come up $0. That's some bullshit.
That shit crazy.
Yeah.
How is it though?
Man, that's some bullshit. I'm really gonna be quarantined on this whole shit, bro.
Oh yeah, they got you on that quarantine club for how long? 3 days?
I don't know how long, nigga. Shit, I'm about to be the only one in this bitch on my part.
You say what happened?
I said, shit, I'm about to be the only one. Remember me and young enough in this motherfucker. You want these in this bitch.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
What you need?
Huh?
No, I was asking something what that customer needs. Man, listen. You straight?
Yeah, my nigga.
Huh?
So yeah, I'm good, oh shit, yeah. You got passion number, right?
Yeah.
So Dig, I'm gonna need you to call her one thing, nigga, and get that truck up there, nigga. Get my phone out there back seat, bro.
Oh man. All right. Well, I'm going to get the truck up there. What tell her?
Tell her you gonna you fuck around and lost a car that there too when we was moving the radiator on the seat. Now
You have 1 minute remaining for this call.
reach behind that back seat.
Where? Yeah.
So you reach behind that back seat, bro. The box right there, straight behind the middle of that back seat, bro.
Okay, under it or in the back or in the back
In
thing?
the back, like right in the back of the seat, bro.
Okay.
On the second row.
I got you. You know you took the key. You took the key to the gate.
It's the same key.
I don't got that key to it.
Yeah, you do. It's the same key to the lock at the door.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. All right.
Yeah, it's the same key, bro.
Now, you know I got you. I'll put the money on the phone later, man. When I get around, baby, I will put the credit card.
It's all about the key. I told my wife and how to break up the key.
No, I don't need it though. If you said the same one, I got it. So I don't need it right now anyway. Just when I get the scrap out of there.
Okay.
Y'all, I'm sorry, but Cordell reminds me of the Detroit version of Lamont.
From the vehicle, like Mr. Butts asked you to.
She came up there, but no, I wasn't successful. It wasn't there.
Wasn't there? Okay.
When we say she, who you referring to?
Tasha,
And who's Taki that you know of?
his baby mom.
Okay. Did you look for it in the vehicle?
Yeah, I looked for it.
Okay. And you were unsuccessful at finding it.
Yes.
And Mr. I want to talk to you now about the second time that you were speaking with Detroit police. Would it be fair to say that was just a couple days after your first time?
It was not long, a few weeks maybe. I was off tether at that point, I believe.
Okay. And do you recall talking about fixing a red Jaguar and going to Ypsilanti?
Yes, I do.
Tell me about how many times did you and Mr. Butts go to Ypsilanti?
I believe it was either 2 or 3.
All right. And tell me about how did that come about? Whose red Jaguar is this?
My son's grandma.
Your son's grandma.
So she called, said she was having some problems with it and asked if we would come look at it, which is not unusual. We do house calls depending on the person and where it's located, but this is my son's grandma, so of course we're gonna make the exception. She called and said she was having problems with the car, asked if we would come look at it. We went, assessed the car at her house the first time. I think we made a minor repair there, not to the extent that it was the problem that she was having after the fact.
Okay. So where is this red Jaguar located when you guys go out to see it?
It's in my son's grandma driveway in Ypsilanti,
Ypsilanti.
off Michigan Avenue, I believe.
All right. And who goes with you out there that first time?
Jarvis.
Okay. It's just you and Jarvis Butts?
Yes.
Okay. So you guys go out there and you assess, make a minor repair.
Yeah.
Does it completely fix the car?
For that problem, yes.
Okay. And then is there another time that you end up having to do work on this red Jaguar?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me about that.
She drove the Jaguar for a while. It was doing fine. And then she said it was leaking something. I asked her what it was leaking. She said she didn't know. I asked her if she could get it towed to the shop. She said, yeah.
Okay. So at some point, this red Jaguar gets towed to your shop at 9000 Connor?
Yes.
Okay. And who works on it at 9000 Connor?
Me and Jarvis.
Okay. And what do you do when you finish fixing? Do you ever finish fixing the red Jaguar?
Yes.
Okay. And what do you do when you finish fixing it?
We take it back to her. I called her first and asked her how she was planning on retrieving the vehicle. She said she was going to tow it, and I didn't want to cost her no more money, so I told her that we could bring it.
Okay. And do you recall if that was on or about January 9th of 2024?
It was on.
It was on that day?
Yes.
Okay. So on that day, before you take the red Jaguar back, who was, tell me about how that day started for you.
I woke up. I typically leave the house at 6 because that's what time I could leave. So I went to the gym. I got to the shop probably around 8:30. I don't know who opened the shop. I can't really recall which one of us opened it, but Jarvis may have been there already. A few cars came in, then the Jaguar probably got there maybe around 9 o'clock. I assessed the Jaguar. Jarvis left for a moment. I had another mechanic, being it's a foreign car, so I had a foreign car mechanic on call to help with the work, but he was busy, so he came. Said he wouldn't have time to do it, so I think I Googled it, seen how it was done, and I proceeded taking the water pump off.
Okay. So you were working on the Jaguar, and is Mr. Buck at work that day?
Yes, he was there.
Okay. What do you guys being you and Mr. Butts, do as it relates to work that night?
I think we had a few cars that came in that needed some minor repairs. Between that and the Jaguar, we was jumping in and out of the Jaguar job, and the cars that could pull it up, maybe oil change, tune up, whatever, et cetera, so forth was. But we was mainly working on the Jaguar, trying to get the water pump off, as it is a hard job to do.
Okay. And do you always have all of your parts on stock or on your person in stock with you?
No, we call either AutoZone, Mansfield, one of the auto stores that has them.
Okay. And did you have to go get any auto parts on January 9th?
Yes, we had to go get the water pump for the Jaguar, as well as some other parts, I believe, for other cars.
Okay. And when you go and get parts, is it usually just one of you, both of you, or something else?
That depending. If it's a car there, then one of us will stay. If it's not a car there, we go together sometimes.
Okay. And on January 9th of 2024, did one of you guys go to the auto parts store, or did you both go?
We both went.
Both went? Okay. Tell me what happens when you go to the auto parts store.
Before that, I called them. They ordered the water pump, so we went and picked it up when they called and said it was in. We got in the truck, went to AutoZone, got the water pump. On our way back from AutoZone, I believe we forgot something, so we ended up turning back around, going back to AutoZone, grabbed whatever we forgot, came back, and on our way back, we was coming down Harper. Jarvis said, "I see my niece right there. She walking." We pulled into Angel's liquor store. I still didn't see her. He pointed across my face, said she right there. She was coming across the street at that time. She got in the truck with us. She spoke, "Hi King, hi Jay," and we proceeded back to the shop.
Okay. So when you guys are driving to these auto parts stores, who's driving?
Jarvis,
Okay. And where are you at?
passenger seat.
Okay. And you said when you guys are heading back to the shop the second time,
Mhm.
That's when you said Jarvis spots someone.
Yes,
Who does he say that he spots?
his niece.
His niece. Okay. And do you recognize his niece?
Yes, when I see her, when he pointed her out to me, yes, I recognize her walking across the street.
Okay. And so you guys pull over. Where does she get into the car at?
I believe she getting the behind me, so the back seat behind me.
Okay. Does Jarvis say anything to her?
Yeah, she speaks to both of us, and we speak back.
Okay. What does he say to her?
Hi.
Hi. And where do you guys go after you pick up his niece?
Back to the shop.
Okay, and that's at 9,000 Connor?
Yes.
Okay. And what do you guys do when you get back to 9,000 Connor?
He back in. We get out. We proceed to working on the Jaguar. I may have got out the car first with the parts, and he was in the car with her for a second. I got out, started working on the Jaguar.
And what happens next? What do you guys do?
I believe she get out, get into the front seat, reposition herself to the front seat of his truck. It was colder that day. I believe she started the truck. We started working on the Jaguar, putting the parts back on. It took a little minute. Like I said, it was a difficult job, so it took a while. At some point, I believe his truck ran out of gas, so we had to stop what we were doing to push his truck to the gas pump so he could get some gas.
So you said that she gets out of the car that you guys were in?
Yes.
Okay, and then she gets into Jarvis's truck?
No. We was always in Jarvis' truck.
Okay.
So she gets out the back seat and repositions herself to the front seat so she can start the cover.
And tell me, what kind of car, or what kind of truck does Jarvis drive?
Escalade.
Okay. And what color?
It's pearl white.
What, if you can see, what is his niece doing while you guys are working on the shop, at the shop?
I believe she's on her cell phone, I believe.
Does Jarvis ever take his niece anywhere that, like, while you guys are working at the shop?
No.
No, okay. Did you ask him if he was gonna take her home at all?
I believe I asked him, was he gonna drop her off when the truck ran out of gas? We had to push it to the pump. It was just a distraction from work, so I asked, was he gonna drop her off? He said no.
And did you finish working on the Jaguar that day?
Yes.
Okay. And what happens after you finish up on the Jaguar?
I called my son, grandma, and asked her how she was gonna retrieve the vehicle. She said she was gonna tow it back. I told her she didn't have to do that. That was just spending extra money. So I asked Jarvis, was it all right if we dropped it off? He said yes. And we started making preparations to do so.
Do you recall about what time you guys finished the Jaguar and prepared to leave?
Right around 7:30ish, somewhere around there.
When do you guys eventually leave the shop?
Yes.
Okay. And tell me about who all leaves the shop?
Me, Jarvis, and his niece.
Okay. And tell me about the driving arrangements.
So I drove my 300 and Jarvis drove the Jaguar.
And where was his niece at?
She was with him in the front seat of the Jaguar.
Now, are you able to recall what his niece looked like that day?
Yes. Faintly, but yes.
Do you remember what kind of clothing she was wearing?
I remember she had her jacket on. Like I said, a coat. It was cold, so I think it was colorful.
Colorful?
Yeah.
Young man, approach.
Yes.
And Mr. Wright, I'm approaching you with People's Proposed Exhibit 2. And I'm going to direct you to the top left corner. Can you tell me, is there anything that you recognize in that?
The jacket in Channel 1.
Okay. And is that a fair and accurate depiction of the jacket that you've seen his niece, Jarvis's niece, wearing that day?
Yes.
And I move for the admission of People's Proposed Exhibit 2.
Any objection? Okay. We'll be admitted as People's Exhibit 2.
Thank you. And I'm going to show you your man cookie. And then showing you its Mark Appeals Proposed Exhibit 3. Do you recognize what I just handed you?
Yes.
Thanks. And is that a fair and accurate depiction of Jarvis's niece as you remember seeing her back on January 9th, 2024?
Yes.
Okay. And is that the same niece that went with you to Ypsilanti?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And I move for the admission of People's Proposed Exhibit 3.
No objection. Okay, it'll be admitted as People's Exhibit 3.
Thank you. So, you guys are driving to Ypsilanti. So you're driving in your 300, and Jarvis is driving the Jaguar with his niece.
Yes.
Okay. About how long does it take you guys to get to Ypsilanti?
It was raining that day, so about 35 minutes.
And when you get to Ypsilanti, what do you do?
We get out, we park the car, get out, we go in. My son's grandma and I believe his auntie was there as well, so they greeted us. They spoken to him before, so they greet him. And then my son, grandma asked who the little girl was.
And did you introduce the little girl?
No,
Okay. Who introduced the little girl?
Jarvis,
And what did Jarvis introduce her as?
his niece.
You know how older women, who's this little girl? Like, I know you don't have, okay, who is she? Is she one of your daughters? As she should. People need to get back into being respectfully nosy, and people need to not be put off by that. So at least somebody asked. That's not normal for a grown man to be rolling with a little girl who is not his daughter, not his blood. So he's calling her his niece. Meanwhile, we know that's not his niece. And on top of that, they have a actual relationship going on. So that was a whole lie. But he knew he was lying. He knew he was lying. And people need to be called out on their bullshit, too. Because this man probably knew in the back of his mind something was up. Little girls, you know, most women, we have a hard time covering up how we feel anyway. A young lady, come on now.
And about how long do you guys stay in Ypsilanti?
Not long, maybe 15 minutes or so. My son, auntie had to go get the rest of our money that my son, grandma didn't have, so she went to the ATM.
What do you guys do when you went to the ATM?
Talking. She was just telling us about other work she needed to do around her house, et cetera, so on and so forth.
And was Mr. Butts with you the whole time?
Yes.
So you guys eventually leave Ypsilanti.
Yes.
And tell me about the driving arrangements coming or leaving Ypsilanti.
At this point, we only have one vehicle, which is mine. We get in, drive us in the front. I believe Naziah sat behind me.
Sat behind you?
Yes.
Okay. So, and is there any kind of talking or conversation when you guys are driving?
No, I got sounds in my car, so no.
And do you recall about what time you guys, I guess, where do you guys go when you leave Ypsilanti?
Back to 9,000 Connor.
Okay. And do you recall about what time you guys get back to 9,000 Connor?
Probably around 8:45. I was cutting it close on the tether.
What do you do when you get back to 9,000 Connor?
Opened up the shop door where he left. He left his truck in one of the bays, so we opened up that bay door, went through the gas station because that's the way we entered the shop. Went through the gas station, opened the shop, opened one of the bay doors. I went to the back and started splitting the money that we had made for the day, and separating the receipts, etc.
Where do you see his niece go?
Getting this truck,
Do you recall where at his truck she got into?
passenger seat,
Is the front passenger, back passenger, or something else?
front passenger.
And where's Mr. Butts at?
Back in the back with me, separating the cash.
And when you leave, do you lock up the shop?
No, I left first.
You left first. Okay. So when you leave, who's still at the shop?
Jarvis and his niece.
Do you see them leave the shop at all?
No.
And have you seen, Jarvis's niece, the one that was with you on the 9th? Have you seen her since January 9th, 2024?
No.
Now I want to talk about the day after that you guys went to FC, so January 10th. Do you recall if Mr. Butts was at work that day?
I don't think he was.
What makes you think that he wasn't?
I believe he called me like 3 times, 4 times. No reason for him to call me if he was standing right next to me.
So I don't think he's speculating, so that's what he believes.
Can you ask the question? Re-ask the question.
Yes. So you said that you don't believe he was at work because he would call you, or he called you so often?
He called me. We had a 30-minute conversation on one account, and then we had another conversation about 15 minutes. So
So that makes you believe in your mind that he was actually at the scene?
What's the question first?
He's asking, based on those conversations, in his mind to him, that means that Mr. Butts was not at the shop with him. I don't think that's leading.
It's stating the conclusion.
You said he already stated that he wasn't at the shop. We didn't do it. So I'll overrule.
Thank you. You can.
one more time. I'm sorry.
Sorry. So based on the length of those phone calls and the times of them, did that make you believe that Mr. Butts was not at the shop?
Right.
Did Jarvis Butts ever mention to you about his niece being missing?
No.
Have you talked to Mr. Butts, aside from that jail call that we played, since turning himself in?
No.
And do you know someone, do you know any of Jarvis's siblings?
Yes.
And which sibling do you know?
I met his brother and I met his sister.
You talked to his sister. Well, start that. Do you remember would his sister ever come to the shop?
Sporadically.
Sporadically, okay. And are there times that you talk to her?
Yes.
Okay. And you talk to her about Jarvis's niece being missing?
After the police questioned me, I believe she came up there and we spoke about it, yes.
And Mr. Wright, I'd asked you earlier about if you'd seen Mr. Butts in the courtroom, so that you couldn't see him.
Yes.
Okay. May I approach?
Yes.
And I'm showing you People's Proposed Exhibit 9. Can you tell me if you recognize that photo?
Yes.
And who is it in that photo?
Jarvis.
Okay. Next, Jarvis Butts?
Yes.
Okay. Now I move for the admission of People's Proposed Exhibit 9.
Exhibit as People's Exhibit 9.
Thank you. Mr. Wright, I kind of want to direct your attention back to People's Proposed Exhibit 3, the People's Exhibit 3, I'm sorry. Can you see it from here where I'm holding it?
Yes.
Okay, and do you know who this person in this photo is now?
Yes.
Okay. And who do you know her as now?
Nazaya.
And the next time that you see Jarvis Butts after January 9th, 2024, do you see any injuries on him?
No, I don't believe I've seen it.
Really further, Judge.
Okay, Ross?
Thank you.
And Jarvis is sitting right there, but that man said 2 times he didn't see Jarvis.
Good morning.
You said that, I believe, in your testimony that you have known Mr. Butts since about 2018, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And you said you met at Frank's, the shop that you looked at.
That's correct.
And you said you guys worked together at Frank's for about 2 years.
That's correct.
And so that means in about 2020, you opened up the shop on Connor? Is that-
No, in 2021, I went to prison.
Okay.
So that's why we didn't work together for that period of time.
And
But
so you came back
I came back and we went back to the same thing.
at Frank's,
Yes.
and then what year was that?
That was 2023.
Okay. And so then how long after you came back were you, the two of you at Frank's together?
Maybe a few months to maybe like the middle of the year. So maybe around either June. It was before summer, so maybe around April. It was still a little cold outside.
Okay. So like early spring
Yeah.
of 2023 is when you said that you think that you opened up the shop at 9:00?
Yes, it could have been earlier than that, but yes, around about.
And so you became business partners?
Yes,
Did you become business partners?
yes,
Okay. You also consider Mr. Butts a friend at that point?
yes.
As far as the business arrangement, you said it was a 50-50 split. Did you split it every day at the end of the day? Or?
Every day at the end of the day.
Now back around the beginning of 2024, maybe the end of 2023, were you seeing a woman in Clinton Township?
A woman in Clinton Township?
Yes. A friend of a woman named Shannon Harris?
In 24?
Yes.
No.
Or ever?
Yes.
When were you seeing her?
It probably was 2000 and maybe 19 or 20.
So before you went?
Before I went to prison.
Okay. Did you and Mr. Butts ever have a falling out about that?
No.
Now you and Mr. Butts, did you talk about your personal lives?
Sometimes, yes.
You just spent good days at work together, right?
Right.
So presumably it came up.
Of course.
Talk about girlfriends.
Of course.
Did women often come to the shop looking for Mr. Butts?
Sporadically.
Did he talk to you about the various women that he would be seeing or juggling, maybe?
That happened.
Did it sometimes cause drama at the shop?
It happens.
Would come up and confront Mr. Butts,
It happens.
maybe about other women that he was seeing?
It happens.
Did you ever feel like that was affecting the business?
Not at Frank's.
What about at the business that you owned in Connor?
No, it didn't happen as much there.
Didn't happen as much in Connor?
Right.
Okay. Now, sometime, I guess, while the two of you all were working together, you had a friend that was, I guess, talking to or trying to date one of Mr. Butts' daughters. Is that correct?
That happened.
The daughter was 21, 22.
She was somewhere around there. I'm not 100% certain, but yeah, around that age, 20, 21, 22.
And that caused an issue for Mr. Butts.
It did.
He got pretty upset with his friend.
It did. I was in prison at the time, so, but yes, I was involved directly.
Did you ever hear about an altercation that happened between the two of them?
Some kind of altercation did occur, yes.
Was it your impression that Mr. Butts was pretty protective of her?
Yeah,
Based on that,
based on that.
do you know how many children Mr. Butts has?
13?
And you said that some of them would come to the shop.
Baby, what? Hold on a second. Did he say 13? 13? I don't even know what to say. You're going to have to check with me on tomorrow. We talk about this tomorrow or something. I'll have something to say. Right now, I'm blown. I don't know. I must have zoned out or something when they said 13. I'm like, what? A PDFer with 13. And these, look, can people, look, anybody out here, don't give wife benefit. A child is a wife benefit. Okay? Don't give a wife benefit to a bum. There is no place on earth where a man should have 13 children who is not in the home, taking care of them, loving them, financially responsible, love their mom, all of the things. That is absolutely insane. And he's a PDFer. Why is it all the SA people have all the damn kids? Okay? There's the baby daddy of one of the moms that I do reactions on my other channel. That man has 10 kids and he is a whole registered SA PDFer. He's a whole SA dude. Okay? There's probably ones they don't even know about. Unbelievable. I'm in shock. I don't even care that he's 41 because I'm sure there's worse stories out here of men with a lot of kids. And I'm not talking about with a wife and they got a big family and stuff like that. I'm not even talking about that, but that's not a cover either, because there's weird shit that happens everywhere and anywhere these days. You can't even really qualify stuff anymore. But if you got your kids here, there, everywhere, pillar to post, come on now. A mess.
And I've been asking him, not all of them, but at the shop on Connor, you said his sons would come,
His son will come sometimes and stay today with us.
and his daughter.
She'll come sometimes and stay today with us.
And what's her name? Do you recall?
No, I don't want to misname it.
Okay.
I think it's someone with a J or something like that, though, but I'm not 100% sure.
Was she like a teenager?
He has a teenager. She come up there sometime, but not really. The littlest one, maybe 9, 7, 8, 9, somewhere around there.
Okay. And then his niece would also come?
Yes.
Would she come typically with his own children?
When I first met her, yes, that's how I met her with his daughter. She would always come with his daughter. They would come up there.
I'm
sometimes,
sorry.
anytime.
If I were the judge or the prosecutor, I would have just said straight up and down, once we get past this little formality here, Naziah was not his niece, and she needs to be addressed by her name. Why is it? And was it her niece, his niece? It wasn't his niece. It was not. They had no blood relation. He was having sex with her. It's weird to keep calling her his niece. Number one, because she wasn't, and number two, he was having a sexual relationship with her.
Maybe money, just typical kid stuff.
Did he ever, or did the two of you ever have them like doing chores around the shop?
Sometimes.
Did Mr. Buzz talk to you about his children?
Yes.
Did he talk about spending time with them?
Yes, I believe he lived with the majority of them.
And you said that, you mentioned Tasha. She's one of the mothers of some of his children,
Yes.
correct? Was that who he was living with at the time?
No, I don't believe so.
Now, you said, I believe in your testimony, that you had been to Ypsilanti twice with Mr. Butts.
Or 3 times, one of the.
It possibly could have been 3.
It could have possibly been 3. I'm not 100% certain.
Now, one of the times that his niece was at the shop was, you said, on January the 9th.
First time I seen her by herself, yes.
That's because you all picked her up on Harper?
Yes.
Did Mr. Butts seem surprised that he saw her?
I'm not sure. I couldn't really, we was riding. I wasn't really paying attention to his expression. He just said, "Hey, there go my niece." I didn't see her, so he pointed her out to me. And
at that time, you only knew her as his niece, correct?
Yes.
You didn't have any idea what her name was at that time?
No.
And in fact, the reason you learned her name was when you identified that picture that was just shown to you and the police told you what her name was. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say.
Now, in the time that you were at the shop on the 9th with Mr. Butts and his niece, did you see any inappropriate behavior or anything that made you raise your eyebrows between the two of them?
No.
What about any of the other times that his niece would have been there at the shop? Did you ever see any behavior that made you question or thought was inappropriate?
I can't say I have.
Now, the 3 of you rode back from Ypsilanti on January 9th. That was your testimony, right?
Yes.
Was there any conversation between Mr. Butts and his niece in the car?
There was no conversation between really nobody. I had the music on.
And I'm going to back up to earlier in the day when the 3 of you came to the shop the first time after you picked her up on Harper.
Okay.
You said that she pretty much stayed in Mr. Butts' car the whole time?
Yes.
She said she was on her phone.
Yes.
Did you ever leave the shop at all after that before you guys went to Ypsilanti?
Maybe in the gas station.
So not the, just the attached gas station.
Yeah, maybe to the gas station. I'm not sure if I actually physically left the building. I'm not sure.
Would it have been for more than like 5 or 10 minutes?
If I ever left, no, maybe to use the bathroom, so maybe 10 minutes tops if I had to leave.
You didn't run out to grab parts at any place that you can recall?
Not that I can recall.
Now, after January 9th, what was the next time you said that you saw Mr. Butts?
The 11th.
The 11th. Okay, he was not at work on the 10th?
No.
Okay. Were you there on time on the 10th, do you recall?
I'm never on time.
What time did you come in on the 10th?
Probably about 8:40. I go to the gym, so we open at 8, but I'm never there at 8. So I probably got there maybe 8:49.
And on the 10th, were you the one that opened the shop?
Yes.
Now, you were aware at that time that Mr. Butts was supposed to turn himself in and serve a jail sentence in William County Jail. That's correct?
Yes, I am.
You have talked about that, obviously, because he was going to have to leave the business for a while.
Correct.
Okay. And you actually went to the courthouse on the day he turned himself in to support him, right?
Yes, I was there.
And he was going to be serving time on a gun possession charge, is that right?
That's correct.
If you know.
That's correct.
Okay. And because you were kind of paying attention to what was happening, you understood that the court date had gotten changed a few times?
Yeah, he told me that it had changed. So I believe he's supposed to get sentenced on the 9th, but it got pushed back to February the 7th. So I learned that through him. I didn't go to court with him that time, but just when he got sentenced, I went to court with him that time.
Are you familiar with any court dates that he had out in Clinton Township around that time?
He did say he had something going on with his daughter, I believe. I believe it was domestic with his daughter of some sort. So yeah, I was familiar with that, I believe.
Was he going to court for that at that same time?
Around about, I believe it was supposed to be, yes.
Now you got involved because at some point you became aware that the Detroit police wanted to talk to you back in February.
They came to the shop and picked me up
Okay, they actually took you down.
to headquarters.
Okay, and that was the first time on February 13th, is that right?
That was February 13th, day before Valentine's Day.
Then you said you spoke with them again a couple days later.
Yes, I believe the first time I spoke with him, I was still on tether, so it had to be sometime after I was on tether, yeah.
And then you spoke with them again in March, right?
Yes.
And was that a phone conversation?
No, all of our conversations was via person.
Okay. And then a couple weeks ago, did you also speak with the police
Yes.
and the prosecutors?
I don't know if a prosecutor, but yes, I believe she was.
As far as you can remember?
Yes.
Now, in February, when you were talking to the police, by that time, had you seen anything on the news or on social media about who you later learned was Mr. Butts' niece?
No.
So at the time you were interviewed by the police, you didn't know anything about?
No.
Okay. And at the time that you were talking to the police, while you were on tether in February, you're on tether because you're on parole, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you had about 3 weeks left on parole at that point.
Not 3 weeks in February.
Yes.
I had 3 weeks left on tether. I got off actual parole in May.
Okay. So the tether was coming off, but you were still gonna have to report.
3 more months
Okay.
after the tether came off.
And in February, I believe it was the second conversation that you had with a detective, presumably. You and the officer or the detective spoke about the tether, right? Do you recall that?
I believe so, yes.
Because you were concerned every time you would go somewhere, you would be late. You were very
Oh, yeah,
about
yeah.
being home on time.
Right.
And in fact, he actually said, "Hey, we'll take care of you if anything pops up," right?
He said, I talked to your PO, so you're fine.
Okay. And he also kind of warned you that you didn't want to get somebody upset about the way you were answering his questions and have somebody feel some kind of way about you. Do you recall him saying that to you?
He may have said something to that extent. I'm not sure though. This is the first conversation or the second you asked me
The
about?
second, right at the top of the conversation.
I can't really recall every word. I know they were a little agitated. I was a little agitated. There was a lot going on, so maybe
It's possible that conversation.
it's possible.
Did you understand any of his statements while you're talking to him, to mean that the police wanted you to give answers, and if you didn't give answers, that they could mess with your parole or your tether status?
Also speculation, Judge,
It goes to his state of mind.
but he doesn't know what happened.
It's about what he believes might happen and could impact what he said.
Speculation is to rephrase it as far as what they actually asking.
Was it your understanding that if you didn't give certain answers, that the police might impact your parole, your tether status? Was that a concern of yours?
I mean, it was already affecting my tether, so I wasn't really, you know what I mean, concerned about how he placed his questions upon me. No. So I mean, more of the concern was my being picked up by the police. Police contact is a violation of parole within itself. So I was violated for the police contact, regardless to whatever he was saying. You get what I mean? So no, I don't believe it impacted anything at all, actually.
But your parole wasn't actually revoked because they took you to the station and interviewed you, right?
No.
Now, we talked a little bit about this a few minutes ago. Mr. Butts was juggling a few different women during the time you knew him.
Yes.
And it's hard to keep up with all his baby mamas.
I mean, yeah, it wasn't my job, so yeah.
And ladies that weren't his baby mamas.
Right.
Did you get the impression from Mr. Butts that he didn't want these women to know about each other?
Of course.
And a woman named Tasha was one of Mr. Butts' ladies,
Yes.
and that was one of his baby mamas.
Yes. To my belief, yes.
So there was some discussion about a phone call between you and Mr. Butts while he was at the jail about his phone, right?
Yes.
And after that phone conversation, Tasha actually came into the shop to get some work done on the car.
Yes, she came to get a oil change in a headlight.
And that's when you went and kind of looked for the phone.
Yes.
Now, you didn't really want Tasha to know that you were looking for the phone, right?
Of course not.
And the reason for that was,
She's gonna wonder why I'm looking for a phone.
and was it your impression that Mr. Butts was afraid it would reveal that he was talking to other women?
Of course.
And so you're trying to help him keep
course.
peace?
Of course.
Yes. I think the testimony was on the 9th, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there was an issue during the day. Mr. Butts had his escalator there, is that correct?
Yes.
And he had run out of gas,
Yes.
and he had to get gas, is that right?
That's correct.
At some point, you pushed him to the, or helped push the escalator to a gas pump.
Yes.
Do you recall leaving with him that night and going and getting gas together?
For his truck, or what we saying? Or for like a gas can? What do you?
Well, either one. Did you all leave the shop to, and perhaps you in your vehicle and he in his vehicle and end up at a gas station
No.
on the night?
No.
You don't have any recollection of that?
I don't remember that. No.
Okay. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Can you redirect? Okay. Mr. Wright, you are going to testify.
Thank
Y'all, that shackle shuffle. Okay.
Okay. As we discussed in our last hearing, we are only hearing one witness today in this case, correct? That's correct, I guess. We have an agreed upon date starting back January 6th. I have blocked.
Okay, so you hear that. So this was November 1st. They heard one witness. The agreed upon date was January 6th. When was that? This past Monday. Okay. And the preliminary exam yielded a bind over, and the bind over date is January 16th, where I guess the trial begins. I don't know, or maybe it's pre-trial. I need to look and see what to expect. I'm going to look on the docket and see what that actually means. I haven't done that yet, but I guess there's a few more minutes. So maybe like 2 or 3, maybe 2, maybe just a minute. Let's see what the judge says. And then if you guys want to watch more of this together, if you want me to repeat what happened Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we did watch the results. We watched the last part of Thursday, which was yesterday at the beginning of this. So if you came in later and you missed that part, that's what we watched initially, because some people were not even familiar with this case. So I felt like it was good to start from the end. But this case, the trial hasn't even begun. This exercise was to determine, it's like a long, extra long probable cause hearing, basically. So, and it did yield the judge making the decision for it to go to trial. And she said the bind over date would be the 16th of January. So things are moving. All right, let's hear the last little bit, and I'm gonna let y'all go.
January 6th, 7th, and 8th, and the people have, is it correct, 21 more witnesses?
And we know that happened.
Okay. Anything else that we discussed on this matter before we start the next? None of this issue. Okay, we are off the record. And I will allow for 15-minute break, so everyone can use the restroom, get some water, come back for the next thing.
So I'm not sure. They may have had some other housekeeping items, motions, things of that nature. Maybe, I don't know. But that's it for now. Are they going to walk him out? She said she was going to allow for a 15-minute break. Let's see. He looks like he's in pain. He looks like he's in pain and suffering. Maybe he's sick, but they should make him take that mask off, but whatever. I guess not. I guess they can't make him if that's what he chooses to want to do. But anyway, despicable. This guy is a certified bum, and people came and dropped all the TT all this week. They came through, they dropped all of the TT. They dropped everything they knew. You're invested now. Okay. All right, so when I come back later, we're not going to be doing this. I feel like we've had a nice good dose for one day. I don't want to overdo it. We can get into it either later tonight or tomorrow. We will get into it because we've got like 4 days of testimony to cram into the weekend. If you guys are up for it, I am. We can figure it out, right? And the good thing for us is, guess what? We get to speed through the breaks. And we can do it on 1.25. Okay. Anybody talking slow, girl? So you know what I'm saying? Like we can figure this out. Okay. Now when I come back, I got some Ricky Smiley. So if you guys are into what's going on with the Ricky Smiley, we're going to talk about that. If you guys missed, yesterday was someone named Ernest Williams' birthday. We kikied a little bit about it, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, bring on the trial already. Okay. Okay. And a couple of other things. I was into some other things too, to talk about, but those are if I can come back and do that Ricky Smiley reaction, I do have some hot topics to talk about. So you guys, hopefully it's not going to snow. It doesn't snow like that, but, it's looking kind of rough in Atlanta right now. Let me see. Y'all, hold on. Hopefully my screen does. Oh man, you know when the screen just flip, y'all. Hold on a second. Y'all, they are losing their minds in Atlanta right now. Hold on, that's Shamar. Okay, look at Shamar. Shamar is losing it in Atlanta right now. He's so happy with his little fake chinchilla. I'm not mad against a good fake fur coat, but damn it, get the size that fits you. Okay, see, that's the size that you or I would go and try and get it, and it sold out because some little puny size guy came through and took the full length chinchilla coat. Okay, the finfilla. That is not a chinchilla. Wait, let me see Atlanta News First. Atlanta News First had the people running off the airplane. I'm grateful that, it's a good thing they did not take off because that could have been bad. Hold on a second. Let me look up Atlanta News First. I had it pulled up, but the screen flipped. Atlanta News First. Okay, there it is. Oh, hold on. Look at the puppy. This will be Lambo's first snow if it does snow. Look at the puppy. Oh, how cute. Don't you love when it snows and people start sending in pictures of their kids or the dogs and everybody is enjoying outside? Love that. Okay, so this is what happened at the airport, you guys. If you did not know, about 200 people were evacuated from a Delta plane at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Baby, they couldn't get off fast enough. Look at that. And they didn't let them take their luggage. When I first clicked on this, like I was clicking into Instagram and I saw the people running, I was like, Jesus, is the plane getting ready to explode? And then I don't know what happened. Maybe the brakes stopped working, but they made the people slide off the plane, y'all. Ooh, I would be scared to take off. And they're on their way. If you're on your way to Minneapolis, this must be nothing. I'm gonna just say that. Because this was a plane destined for Minneapolis, Minnesota. And if you are on a plane going to Minneapolis, Minnesota in January, baby, this is nothing for you. Because you already know what you're getting yourself into going to Minneapolis. Okay. I'm not even going to talk about that. Because I'm sure it is cold and snowy up there. Girl, don't come to Cleveland. Okay, it's bad. No, I would be shivering in my bone. My bones, the bones in my bones would be shivering. I became a lightweight. I became a lightweight the minute that I left New Jersey and went to Houston, Texas. And I was there almost 5 years, came back, and by the grace of God, my first like quote unquote real job, I had a job with a company that ended up getting bought by Staples. I was a account manager, and I ended up getting moved down here to North Carolina. So, yes. And I've been down here ever since my mid-20s. So I've been down here for a long time, but I was just in New Jersey. Well, it's been 8 months ago now, but we go to New Jersey at least once or twice a year. Anyway, guys, I'm going to let you guys go. This was interesting. Gosh, 3 hours, right? This was interesting. I'm glad I provide some awareness about this story. It's awful. It's awful. It's awful. It's awful. But, this story definitely needs to be heard because unfortunately, due to some complicit behavior, it allowed this man to have access to his own children in a perverted manner, and then children outside of his own. Just disgusting. But these stories need to be told, just like Madeline Soto's murderer will be on the stand very soon too. So Stefan Starnes is his case is coming. He's the alleged murderer, and also PDFer of some egregious acts against the young Madeline Soto. Her mother provided access, period. So it's disgusting. It's disgusting. All right, guys. We'll elevate the energy. Give me a couple of hours. I need to go run to Sam's real quick, handle stuff for my household, make sure Farrah's situated. She's been on home learning all day because they had asynchronous school day, which basically they just have to log in and do their assignments. But when I checked in with her about 30 minutes ago, she was almost done. So we're going to go run to Sam's and pick up my order and get back in the house before the weather turns, because ew. Okay. All right, guys. I'll see you guys later. Watch something that will shift your mood right now. Don't watch any more of this. And then we'll get into it again. It is interesting, just from a case perspective, a true crime perspective, and a court watcher perspective. It just disgusts me when I think about it too much. But from a case and a court perspective, it is really interesting. So if you can kind of take it with that type of energy, it's cool. But if it bothers you too much, I completely understand, because it's gross. Okay, guys, love you. I will see you guys a little bit later on, okay? Make sure your notifications are set. If you're new here and you came through, hit the subscribe. Make sure your notifications are set, and go ahead and tap on that thumbs up. I'll see you guys a little bit later. Hey, Miss Beautiful, can you send me a link to that on Instagram or an email? I'll see if I can find it, but if you could send it to me somewhere, that'd be great. Or link it. Get the link and drop it to the comments, okay? Thank you.